"No uniform at the wedding," Natalie said. She stood in my living room with her purse still hooked over her shoulder, though I had opened the door, taken her wet umbrella, and told her there was coffee. The garment bag hung from the brass hook behind her, black, zippered, harmless looking. My name and rank were printed on the tailor's tag tucked into its clear pocket. Natalie kept looking at it instead of me. 9 days before the wedding, I said. I know when the wedding is. That makes one of us. I thought maybe there'd been a scheduling change. Mom. Her voice carried the old warning. Don't turn this into one of your dry little jokes. I folded the dish towel I was holding and laid it over the back of a kitchen chair. All right, that's it? You said no uniform. I heard you. She blinked, almost disappointed. Natalie had arrived prepared for artillery and found an empty field. Then she drew a breath and said, Graham and I are going to walk in together. That took longer to land. You're not walking me down the aisle, she added. We decided it made more sense. Outside, rain ticked against the front windows. Somewhere under my sink, the dishwasher finished its cycle and gave 3 cheerful beeps. I looked at my daughter and wondered how long she had known she was coming to remove me from my own place in her wedding. 10 months earlier, she had asked me to wear that uniform. She and Graham came to my house on a Sunday afternoon with a bottle of champagne, a grocery store cheesecake, and the kind of guilty brightness people wear when they've done something they know will change your life. I spotted the ring before Natalie could announce it. She talked with her hands when she was excited, and that day her left hand moved like it was directing aircraft. I let her get through the speech anyway. We're engaged, she said. Graham stood beside her with his arm around her waist, smiling so hard his ears had gone pink. He was a handsome man in an unthreatening way. Brown hair, soft gray eyes, a nose that had probably looked too big on him until he turned 30. He worked in corporate communications and had once described his job to me as keeping everybody from saying the quiet part into a microphone. I liked him for that. I hugged Natalie first. She made a sound against my shoulder that was half laugh, half sob. Then I hugged Graham, who gave me 2 careful pats on the back like I might be carrying an undiagnosed spinal injury. Congratulations, I said. Who else knows? You're first, Natalie said. Technically the jeweler, Graham said. She elbowed him. And the waiter at Le Maire, he added. And possibly everyone sitting within 30 feet of our table, because your daughter screamed. I did not scream. You made a sustained, high-pitched sound. I was surprised. A nearby woman covered her wine glass. Natalie laughed and leaned into him. I remember that clearly because later, when things became more complicated, it was tempting to pretend I had disliked Graham from the start. I hadn't. In those first months, I was grateful to him for making her laugh with her whole body. I opened the champagne. Graham tried to do it and wedged the cork halfway out, so I took the bottle before he put a hole in my ceiling. Of course you can disarm champagne, Natalie said. I spent 26 years protecting this country from brunch. We drank from mismatched glasses because I only owned 2 proper flutes. Natalie ate the icing from her cheesecake and left the crust behind, as she had since she was old enough to hold a fork. She told me they wanted a fall wedding. Graham said his mother knew of a restored estate outside Charlottesville that hosted intimate events. How intimate? I asked. 140 people, he said. That's not intimate. That's an evacuation manifest. Natalie gave me the look again, but she was smiling. They talked about stone terraces, late-blooming roses, strings of warm lights, and a dinner menu that seemed to consist largely of adjectives. Graham's mother, Celeste, had already spoken to the estate manager. This detail was delivered casually, though they had been engaged for less than 24 hours. Your mother moves fast, I said. She's excited, Graham replied. What are you 2 excited about? He looked at Natalie. Natalie looked at the ring. Getting married, she said, and there was enough sincerity in her voice to make me set aside the rest. After Graham left to pick up takeout, Natalie lingered in the kitchen. She stood at the counter, turning her champagne glass by the stem. I want to ask you something, she said. I can probably cover the photographer's deposit. Her head snapped up. That isn't what I was going to ask. Good, because I can only cover the photographer if you don't hire somebody who uses the word visual storyteller. You do know regular people can help their daughters without pretending they're approving an equipment requisition. I do. I just don't know any regular people. She rolled her eyes, but then her expression changed. Her fingers stopped moving around the glass. I want you to walk me down the aisle. For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood. Natalie and I had never discussed it. Her father, Dean, was alive but barely part of her life. He lived in Nevada with his third wife and communicated mostly through birthday texts sent one day late. I assumed Natalie would walk alone or with Graham. You don't have to, she said quickly. I know that whole giving away thing is weird. I'd be honored. Her eyes filled. Natalie hated crying in front of me, partly because I had spent too much of her childhood asking practical questions when she needed something else. Can you breathe? Are you hurt? Do you need me to call somebody? Tears had always looked like symptoms to me. It had taken years to understand that sometimes the correct response was not a checklist, so I kept my mouth shut and held out my arms. She came around the counter and folded herself against me. She was only 2 inches shorter than I was, but when she put her cheek on my shoulder, I felt every age she had ever been. Then, muffled against my sweater, she said, "Will you wear your dress uniform?" That surprised me more than the aisle. I eased back enough to see her face. You're sure? Yes, because I own dresses. I know, I've seen both of them. I have 3. The black one with sleeves does not count as different from the black one without sleeves. There's a significant ventilation distinction. She laughed, wiping under one eye with her thumb. I mean it. I want the pictures to show who raised me. The sentence made me look away. My uniform had not been out of its bag in 3 years. The last time I wore it was for my retirement ceremony, when Natalie sat in the front row and cried harder than I did. I had retired as a first sergeant after 26 years in Army medicine. The uniform represented things I was proud of, things I regretted, and entire periods of my daughter's life I knew about mostly through photographs. You don't think it'll be too much? I asked. I think it's you. That was all it took. Graham returned with Thai food and found us still standing by the counter. Natalie told him the plan. That'll look incredible, he said. Seriously, Mara. Very powerful. He said powerful like it was a compliment. And that night it was. The first time I met Celeste Bell, she brought me a candle that smelled like expensive firewood. She lived in a white brick house where the kitchen counters had nothing on them except a bowl of green apples no one was allowed to eat. She was 62, blonde in a way that required scheduled maintenance, and so attentive you could miss the fact that she had ignored everything you said. Mara, she said, taking both my hands. At last. At last, I agreed, though Graham and Natalie had been dating 11 months. Celeste gave me the candle, offered me sparkling water with cucumber, and showed me the wedding binder she had already assembled. The binder was cream linen with Natalie and Graham's initials embossed in gold. Mine, accumulated over 26 years of military administration, had been plastic, olive green, and hard enough to use as body armor. She opened to a page labeled Vision. We're thinking timeless Virginia, she said, before or after indoor plumbing. Natalie pressed her lips together. Graham coughed into his fist. Celeste smiled. You are exactly as funny as Graham said. That was my first warning. People who like a joke laugh. People who dislike one describe you as funny. Still, she was gracious. She had found the venue, negotiated a date, arranged for us to tour the grounds, and prepared 3 budget options. She asked about my service and listened with her head tilted. An army nurse, she said. Medic first, then I completed nursing school. How extraordinary, I could never. Most civilians who said that meant they could never tolerate the danger, the separation, or the rules. With Celeste, I got the impression she meant she could never wear government-issued shoes. Natalie explained that I would escort her in uniform. Celeste paused with one manicured finger on the binder. Oh, she said. Full uniform? It's generally considered poor form to wear half of it. Graham laughed. Celeste did not. How meaningful, she said after a moment, and of course very distinctive. Natalie reached across the table and squeezed my wrist. It was quick, almost hidden, but I noticed. At the estate tour, I noticed more. Celeste walked beside the coordinator asking about candle heights and photographic sightlines. Graham followed them, nodding. Natalie stayed with me at first, but every few yards someone called her forward to decide something she had never known required a decision. Ivory or bone napkins, oak chairs or walnut, ceremony facing the garden or the hills. At the stone arch where the vows would take place, Celeste asked me to stand with Natalie so the coordinator could estimate the width needed for our entrance. Natalie slipped her arm through mine. "Slow," I told her under my breath. "If we go at my speed, we'll get there by Thanksgiving. Your speed is fine. You say that now." She tightened her hand around my forearm. "I want time to see everybody." I looked down the empty aisle. October sunlight lay across the grass, and for one foolish second I could already hear the music. Behind us, Celeste said, "The uniform will certainly create a strong visual." Natalie's hand went still on my arm. Then Graham called to her from the terrace, and she let go. That evening, after everyone left, I took the garment bag from the back of my closet. Dust softened the shoulders. The trousers no longer fit comfortably over the brace on my right knee, and one ribbon had worked loose from the rack. I called a military tailor I knew in Alexandria. "I need it ready by October," I told him. "Big occasion?" "My daughter's wedding." "You wearing it or framing it?" "Wearing it." He was quiet just long enough for me to hear his smile. "Well," he said, "then we'd better make you look like she remembers." I stood in my bedroom with the phone against my ear and my hand resting on the garment bag. At that point, I still believed being remembered was the same thing as being seen. Mr. Kim had been tailoring Army uniforms since before mine carried 3 stripes. His shop sat between a tax preparer and a store that sold phone cases covered in rhinestones. When I stepped inside with the garment bag, he looked at my right knee before he looked at my face. "You finally getting that fixed?" he asked. "It is fixed. That's what Army doctors say when they've run out of ideas." He hugged me anyway, then unzipped the bag on his work table and inspected the uniform with the concentration of a surgeon. "You stored it right. I can follow instructions. You can issue instructions." Following has always been less consistent. Mr. Kim was 74, 5'4", and unimpressed by rank. He had once made a colonel stand barefoot for 20 minutes because the man arrived late for a fitting and complained about parking. He ran his fingers along the jacket seam. "Wedding, you said?" "My daughter's." "She marrying somebody decent?" "So far." "Good answer." I changed behind a curtain that failed to reach the floor. The trousers caught on the knee brace exactly as I knew they would. Once I managed them, I stood on a raised platform while Mr. Kim pinned extra fabric into the inner seam and muttered about manufacturers who cut women's uniforms as if women did not possess hips. My phone buzzed 3 times on a chair. "You can answer," he said. "If it's urgent, they'll call twice." It buzzed again, then immediately began ringing. Mr. Kim gave me a look. "It's a wedding," I said. "Apparently everything is urgent." Natalie did not say hello. The venue needs the first deposit today. What happened to next Friday? Celeste says there was another inquiry for the date, so they need it now, and Graham's transfer hasn't cleared. Mr. Kim crouched beside my knee with pins between his lips. "How much?" I asked. Natalie named a number that made me straighten enough for a pin to find my calf. "Don't move," Mr. Kim said. "Is that possible?" I asked her. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't. That was one of Natalie's phrases. She usually used it when she meant she had already decided I would say yes. I looked at myself in the mirror. The jacket still fit across my shoulders. The woman looking back at me seemed more certain than I felt. "I can cover it until Friday," I said. "Send me the payment link." The air left Natalie's lungs. "Thank you. Make sure Graham pays me back, not Celeste." "Why does that matter?" Because it's his transfer that hasn't cleared. A pause. Fine. And Nat? What? If the venue is creating false urgency to lock you in, that's worth noticing. They're not creating false urgency. There's another couple. You've seen their inquiry? Oh my God, Mom, it isn't an ambush. Mr. Kim removed the pins from his mouth. Could be. I pointed at him to stay out of it. I'm just trying to help, I told her. You always say that right before you make me feel stupid. The accusation came easily, which meant it had been waiting. I don't think you're stupid. You ask questions until everyone else feels like they're being interrogated. I asked too. I have to call the venue. She hung up before I could say anything else. Mr. Kim resumed pinning. She marrying somebody decent? I liked your first answer better. Graham repaid me on Friday at 4:12 in the afternoon. The money arrived with a note that read, "Lifesaver, sorry about the scramble." Natalie called 20 minutes later to tell me the venue had confirmed the date. She sounded happy enough that I apologized for making the deposit harder than it needed to be. You were right to ask, she said, generous now that the problem was gone. I'm just overwhelmed. It's one decision at a time. That is easy for you to say. You like decisions. I like decisions that have consequences. Whether your napkins or ivory or bone is a cry for help. She laughed, and the tension dissolved. That was our pattern. Natalie struck the match. I put out the fire. Then we stood over the wet ashes, pretending the smell was weather. The next few weeks filled with ordinary wedding errands. I drove to Charlottesville to inspect hotel rooms because Celeste had a luncheon. I compared transportation quotes because Graham was traveling. I found a seamstress willing to repair the lace on Natalie's veil after the first one said the fabric was too brittle to touch. The veil had belonged to my mother. It was the only family item Natalie wanted in the ceremony. We spread it across my dining table under 2 lamps while the seamstress, a woman named Rosa with red glasses, examined a tier near the edge. This didn't happen in storage, Rosa said. Natalie glanced at me. No, I said. It didn't. The tier had happened when Natalie tried it on after 3 glasses of wine and caught it on an earring. She'd called me crying, convinced she had destroyed the one thing of her grandmother's she had been trusted to keep. I had driven over with a sewing kit, even though I knew enough about antique lace to know I should not touch it. Can you repair it? Natalie asked Rosa. I can stabilize it. Repair means you won't see the damage. You'll see this if you know where to look. Natalie's mouth tightened. That's all right, I said. Things can still be used after they've been damaged. Rosa looked over her glasses. You talking about the veil? Today. Natalie smiled despite herself. When we left, she hooked her arm through mine on the sidewalk. For half a block, we were easy together. Then she said, Celeste found a different veil. I stopped at the crosswalk. You just paid Rosa $200. I know, I want Grandma's. Celeste was only offering. What kind did she find? Cathedral length? Hand-beaded? Was your grandmother a cathedral? Mom, I'm asking for context. She thinks the old lace might photograph yellow. The light changed, but I did not move until someone behind us cleared his throat. Natalie, if you want another veil, wear another veil. Don't blame the camera. I said I want Grandma's. Then there's nothing to discuss. You make everything sound so simple. A lot of things are simple. That doesn't mean they're easy. She pulled her arm free to press the crossing button, though the light was already changing again. At lunch, she complained about Graham's inability to choose a band. I let the veil go. This, too, was part of our pattern. We could have honesty or peace, but rarely during the same meal. Joe Alvarez saw the uniform before Natalie saw it altered. Joe came to my house one Thursday evening, carrying 2 containers of chicken soup and an extension ladder I had not asked for. Your gutter is sagging, she said. Hello to you, too. I could see it from the road. You were looking for flaws. I was looking at your house. It's not my fault your flaws are visible from traffic. Joe had served with me through 2 duty stations and 1 deployment. She had been a platoon sergeant when I was promoted to first sergeant, which meant she was among the few people alive who had watched me make serious mistakes and did not treat them as shocking revelations. She wore her silver hair cropped close and dressed like every day might require crawling beneath a vehicle. She propped the ladder against my garage before I could stop her. "You're not climbing that in the dark," I said. "You're not my first sergeant anymore." Gravity remains in my chain of command. She climbed 3 rungs just to irritate me, then came down because she had already made her point. While we ate soup, I showed her the uniform. Mr. Kim had rebuilt the right trouser leg so cleanly that the additional room around my brace was nearly invisible. He had reset the ribbons, adjusted the jacket, and replaced a worn strip of braid I had not noticed. Jo circled me with her spoon in one hand. "You look terrifying." "It's a wedding. You look festively terrifying." I checked the side seam in the hallway mirror. Too much? For me personally? Not enough. I'd add a sword. Helpful. "What does Natalie think? She asked for it." Jo stopped joking. "She did?" I looked at her in the mirror. "Why is that surprising?" "It isn't. You made a face. This is my face. Your face just testified under oath." She sat on the arm of the couch. "I'm glad she asked. That's all." Jo knew more than most people about the years when Natalie and I could not speak for 10 minutes without stepping on something buried. She had answered my phone at 2 a.m. when Natalie was 20 and had decided I loved the Army more than I loved her. Jo had also told me, not gently, that denying it too fast would not make it untrue. "She wants me to walk her down the aisle," I said. "That part I expected. In uniform, that part is complicated. Only if we make it complicated." Jo's eyebrows rose. "What?" That sounded suspiciously like something you say 5 minutes before making something complicated. I took off the jacket and returned it to the hanger. Celeste thinks it's a strong visual. Who's Celeste? Graham's mother. Ah, the cucumber water woman. You haven't met her. I've met cucumber water. I zipped the garment bag higher than necessary. She's organized. So are ammunition lockers. Are you going to dislike her as a favor to me? No, I charge for that service. I carried our bowls to the kitchen. Jo followed and leaned against the counter while I rinsed them. "You excited?" she asked. "About the wedding? About walking Natalie?" I watched broth circle the drain. "Yes, try saying it like it didn't hurt." I shut off the faucet. "I'm excited. Better." Jo left after fixing the gutter despite the dark. The next morning, Celeste called and asked whether I could attend a planning meeting at the estate because Natalie's work schedule had changed. "I can make Tuesday," I said. "Wonderful. I told everyone you would. You're so reliable." The meeting included the venue coordinator, the florist, the caterer, Celeste, and me. Graham joined by video for 12 minutes, during which he approved a bourbon tasting station and rejected 2 shades of table linen. Natalie texted that she was sorry and asked me to take notes. I took 11 pages. Celeste objected to the caterer's proposed timeline, so I rebuilt it while they debated flowers. The venue coordinator noticed. "Do you plan events?" she asked. "I've moved medical personnel and equipment across 3 countries. So, yes, usually with fewer peonies." By the end of the meeting, the caterer had my phone number. The florist was sending revisions to my email, and Celeste had begun saying, "Mara will handle that without looking at me first." In the parking lot, she touched my sleeve. "I hope you don't mind that I lean on you," she said. "You have such a gift for logistics. I don't mind helping Natalie, of course. That's what I mean." She smiled, but neither of us pretended she had meant the same thing. My phone rang before I reached the highway. It was Natalie. "Celeste said you were amazing. The bar was low. No one had numbered the tasks. I knew you'd fix it. There was nothing broken. You know what I mean." I did. Behind me, the estate disappeared around a bend. Ahead, traffic had stopped in both lanes, red brake lights stretching toward Richmond. "Natalie," I said, "you and Graham need to start taking these meetings yourselves." "I know. We will. Work is just insane right now." Celeste volunteered me for 6 things today. She trusts you. She assigns me. Is there a difference if you're good at it? I tightened my hand on the steering wheel. "Yes," I said. "There is." She went quiet, and I thought, briefly, that she had heard me. Then she said, The photographer needs the family list by Friday. Can I send you what I have? Traffic started moving. Send it, I said. What she sent had 32 combinations and no category labeled both families. There was bride with mother, bride and groom with mother, bride and groom with Bell family with extended Bell family, Bell men, Bell women. Graham with portrait of father. I read that last one twice. Graham's father, Thomas, had died 7 years earlier. I understood wanting him represented. What I did not understand was why a photograph of a photograph needed its own scheduled portrait, while Natalie's side of the family had been reduced to me, standing in 3 arrangements like a lamp they intended to move between rooms. I called her. You left Aunt Ruth off the list. No, she's in extended family, extended Bell family. That heading is just for the photographer. It doesn't mean anything. If it doesn't mean anything, it should be easy to change. I heard keyboard tapping. Natalie was at work, and I pictured her hunched over her desk with the phone held between her shoulder and ear. Fine. I'll change it to extended family. What about your father? The typing stopped. Dean's name was not on the list or, as far as I knew, the guest list. I had not asked because it was Natalie's decision. Dean had turned absence into such an established habit that questioning it sometimes felt like questioning the weather in Nevada. He isn't coming, she said. Did he say that? He didn't answer. When did you invite him? I sent the save the date. A save the date is not an invitation. Why are you defending him? I'm not. It sounds like you are. I'm trying to find out whether you want him there. I want a lot of things. Her voice changed on that sentence. It became younger without sounding childish, which was something only daughters could do to their mothers. I leaned against the kitchen counter. Do you want me to call him? No, I won't if you don't want me to. I don't. All right. Another pause. But if he calls you, she said, you can tell him the date. I looked at the calendar on my refrigerator. The wedding date was circled in blue even though I could have recited it under anesthesia. That's calling him with extra steps. I knew you'd make it a thing. I'm not making it a thing. It arrived as a thing. Forget it. Natalie, I have a meeting. She hung up. That evening, I added Aunt Ruth and her husband to the photo list, created a heading for Natalie's family, and left Dean's name off. I also added one combination Natalie had not included: bride, groom, mother, and Bell family. Then I sent the revised list to Natalie rather than directly to the photographer. I was learning slowly and against my nature that fixing something without permission could still be a kind of trespassing. She approved it at 11:43 that night with a thumbs up. 2 days later, the photographer emailed me to say Celeste had requested the original version. I forwarded the message to Natalie and wrote, "Your call." She did not answer until morning. "Use yours," she wrote. I smiled at the screen. It was a small thing. Most victories between family members are. Ruth arrived at my house the next Saturday carrying a bottle of wine and a bag of onions. I brought both kinds of medicine, she announced. My sister was 6 years older than I was, and had spent those 6 years behaving as if she had personally invented concern. She wore large earrings, collected grudges on behalf of other people, and could turn chopping vegetables into an indictment. She set the onions on my counter. You look tired. You look observant. Wedding? Partly. Menopause? Don't make me assign you a chair in the driveway. Ruth poured wine while I browned beef for stew. She had offered to host an engagement dinner for the relatives on our side, but Celeste had already scheduled a formal party at her house. When Ruth asked whether she could bring anything, Celeste sent her a link to the registry. Ruth had bought the least expensive item on it, a pair of linen cocktail napkins, and then given Natalie a check privately. I got an email about attire, she said. That sounds serious. It said refined garden formal. What does that mean? No camouflage. What are you wearing? The uniform. Ruth stopped halfway through opening a cabinet. Your actual uniform? No, one I rented for the evening. I'm surprised Natalie asked. Apparently everyone was surprised except me. She wants me to walk her down the aisle in it. Ruth closed the cabinet. That's lovely. You said that like you're apologizing. I'm adjusting. Last Christmas, she left the room when you and Joe started talking about Fort Hood. We were discussing a broken freezer. You were discussing a broken freezer at Fort Hood. So maybe the uniform means something different to her now. I added carrots to the pot. Or maybe she's allowed to have mixed feelings. So are you. I have them. I just don't serve them with dinner. Ruth watched me stir. You serve them, she said. You just puree them first so nobody can identify the ingredients. I handed her the spoon. Taste this. Deflection needs salt. Despite herself, she tasted it. The engagement party took place under a rented tent on Celeste's back lawn. It had chandeliers. I had never attended a backyard event that required overhead crystal, but the effect was beautiful. Celeste understood beauty the way I understood supply chains, as a system that failed when one element was left to chance. Natalie wore cream. Graham wore a navy jacket. They stood beneath a garland of white flowers while friends offered toasts. Ruth and I shared a table with two of Graham's cousins and a dentist named Philip, who seemed troubled by the fact that I was single. You never remarried? He asked. I forgot. He laughed, then realized I had not. Across the lawn, Natalie caught my eye. She made a tiny face at me behind her wine glass. I made one back. For a second, chandeliers and seating charts disappeared, and she was simply my daughter watching me survive an intrusive man. Later, Celeste led guests into the house to see a table of family photographs she was assembling for the wedding. Thomas Bell appeared everywhere, on a sailboat, at Graham's college graduation, holding a cigar at somebody's birthday. His absence had been curated lovingly. There were pictures of Celeste's parents, Thomas's parents, Graham as a grown man with cousins, and Natalie with Graham on vacations. None showed Natalie before she met him. It's only the first pass, Celeste told me. We're still gathering. I have photographs if you need them. Oh, wonderful. We don't want too many, of course. It can become visually cluttered. Families usually are. She tilted her head. Do you have one of Natalie with your parents? I do. My mother had died when Natalie was in college. The photograph I was thinking of showed the three of them at a picnic table, my mother laughing with mustard on her thumb. It was not elegant. It was also the photograph Natalie kept on her refrigerator. And perhaps something from your service, Celeste said. A portrait of you in uniform, if that feels relevant. I'll already be there in uniform. Her smile held, but something behind it shifted. Yes. Of course. Natalie joined us before I could ask what she meant. Mom, you have to try the mushroom thing. What mushroom thing? Something small and expensive on toast. Celeste touched her arm. We were talking about the wedding display. Did you tell her about Grandpa's picture? Which one? I asked. The one with Grandma at the picnic. I want that one. I glanced at Celeste. Perfect, she said. Natalie took my hand and pulled me toward a waiter carrying appetizers. I let myself be pulled. The mushroom thing was good. That was how Celeste operated. Nothing she did was large enough to justify a scene. A heading changed on a list. A photograph did not appear in a first draft. A pause lasted half a second too long. If I objected to each one, I became the source of tension. If I ignored them, they accumulated. My Army experience should have made me better at recognizing that. Most disasters did not announce themselves as disasters. They appeared as small deviations someone promised to correct later. But this was my daughter's wedding, not a field exercise. Every time I felt myself becoming watchful, I made a deliberate effort to stand down. Sometimes Natalie rewarded me for it. She came to my house after her first dress fitting and put a white bakery box on my table. What did you do? I asked. Why does cake mean I did something? You don't bring me cake when you're innocent. It's lemon. Serious, then. She opened the box. Inside were 2 slices from the bakery Celeste preferred, 1 lemon and 1 almond. Natalie took the almond for herself and sat down. I told Celeste the family display needs equal space, she said. I retrieved 2 forks. Equal to what? Her side. Our side. No giant bell museum with you represented by one tasteful headshot. I sat across from her. What brought that up? She sent me a layout. And I said no. The pleasure in her voice was unmistakable. She wanted me to be proud of her, but admitting that would embarrass us both. I took a bite of lemon cake. Good. That's all? What do you want? A certificate? I want you to say you appreciate it. I appreciate it, without sounding like I forced you at knife point. I put down my fork. Natalie, I appreciate it. She softened. Okay. We ate cake from the box because plates would have created unnecessary work. She told me Celeste had chosen a photograph of Thomas for the ceremony program and asked if I wanted a picture of Grandma included. No, I said. Her eyebrows lifted. Why not? Your grandmother hated formal photographs and organized religion. She'd come back just to complain about being put in a ceremony program. Natalie laughed so suddenly, she inhaled cake and started coughing. I handed her water. See? I said. Divine punishment. When she recovered, she reached across the table and touched the back of my hand. I am trying, she said. I know. I need you to know that. I do. For a while, we sat there with our forks between us and the late afternoon sun warming the kitchen floor. Then her phone lit up with Graham's name. She read the message, and the softness left her face. What? I asked. Nothing. That's a very specific nothing. She turned the phone face down. Celeste showed him the processional draft. He thinks the uniform might clash with the flowers. I waited for her to smile. She didn't. The flowers, I repeated. He says he's joking. Is he? Yes. Probably. Natalie picked up her fork and cut the remaining piece of almond cake into smaller and smaller squares. I could have pushed. I could have asked why Graham had seen a processional draft before I had, or why my uniform had become a topic people discussed when I was not in the room. Instead, I ate another bite. 9 months still lay between me and the empty chair, and I had not yet learned how much damage could fit inside the word probably. Probably bought itself another 3 weeks. That was how long it took before Celeste mentioned the uniform directly. Natalie's second dress fitting was held in a bridal salon where the rugs were pale enough to make walking feel irresponsible. Celeste arrived with champagne. I arrived with a small sewing kit, pain reliever, and protein bars because Natalie had skipped lunch. Her friend Paige, the maid of honor, sat on a velvet couch and watched a consultant disappear behind a curtain with $6,000 worth of fabric draped over one arm. If I ever get married, Paige said, I'm wearing something with pockets. You say that now, Celeste replied. Then you see yourself in the right dress. I'd like the right dress to hold my phone. Paige was an occupational therapist with a loud laugh and a practical streak I respected. She had known Natalie since college and could tell her to stop behaving badly without turning it into a referendum on their entire relationship. I envied that freedom. Natalie emerged in a fitted ivory gown with a square neckline and a train that flowed halfway across the room. Everyone went quiet. She looked beautiful, but that was not what held me. Her face had changed. The constant alertness of planning had fallen away, leaving her exposed to the fact that this was real. Well? She asked. Celeste lifted both hands to her mouth. Paige said something profane and complimentary. I stood. Natalie looked at me. Mom, you look like yourself. Her chin trembled. I mean the most expensive possible version of yourself, I added. She laughed, but tears spilled anyway. I crossed the room carefully so I would not step on the train. The consultant handed me a tissue before I needed one. I don't know why I'm crying, Natalie said. That's never stopped you before. Can you be normal for 10 seconds? I have a medical exemption. She leaned toward me and I pressed the tissue beneath one eye so her mascara would not run. Celeste took photographs from behind us. The consultant began pinning the bodice. Natalie's breathing changed. Most people would not have noticed. I had spent too many years noticing. You need air? I asked quietly. She nodded. I stepped between her and the mirror, blocking the consultant's hands. "Give her a minute." "We're almost done," the woman said. "You're done for a minute." The consultant backed away. Natalie shut her eyes. I rested 2 fingers against the inside of her wrist, not because I needed her pulse, but because steady pressure gave her something to locate. "Don't tell me to breathe," she whispered. "I wasn't going to. You were thinking it. I think a lot of things. You'd be exhausted if I shared them all." Her mouth twitched. After a few slow breaths, she opened her eyes. "Better?" "Yes." I offered her half a protein bar from my bag. Celeste stared at it. "In the gown? She can chew without using her hips." Natalie took it and ate 3 bites while the consultant looked toward the ceiling as if asking patience from a higher authority. When the fitting resumed, Celeste showed me a photograph of a silver gray evening dress. "For you," she said. "I already have something for the rehearsal dinner." The dress was sleeveless, beaded at the waist and designed for someone whose upper arms had never hauled a litter. "Pretty," I said. "It would photograph beautifully with the palette. And then, of course, the uniform for the ceremony." She said it correctly. She even smiled. Still, the word ceremony sounded temporary, as if she wanted the uniform brought out for a scheduled demonstration and packed away before cocktails. "I'll need to change before the reception," I asked. "Oh, no, not unless you want to." Natalie looked over from the platform. "She's wearing it all night." "Of course," Celeste said. "It's not a costume change." "Natalie, I didn't suggest that it was." "You kind of did." Celeste's expression flickered with surprise, followed by hurt so refined it might have been rehearsed. "I was only thinking of your mother's comfort. My mother has worn body armor in summer. She can survive dinner." The room went still. I should have changed the subject. Instead, pride warmed me in a place I had thought too old for it. Celeste recovered first. Then that's settled. Afterward, Natalie and I waited in the parking garage while Celeste went back for the champagne she'd forgotten. "I didn't need you to defend me," I said. "I know, but thank you." Natalie leaned against the car beside mine. "She does that." "Does what?" "Makes a suggestion, then acts like you misunderstood if you don't like it. She thinks she's helping." "Don't defend her." "I'm not defending her. I'm identifying her method." Natalie rubbed her forehead. "Graham says it's easier to let little things go. Is it? For him." We exchanged a look. There it was, a moment when Natalie saw the same room I did. I wanted to hold on to it, but Celeste appeared at the elevator carrying the champagne and waving as if we had been caught discussing a surprise party. On the drive home, Natalie called to ask whether I could reach Dean. The request came so abruptly, I nearly missed my exit. "You said not to call him." I changed my mind. "Did something happen?" Celeste asked who was giving me away. I tightened my grip on the wheel. "You already answered that question." "I know." Then she asked whether Dad had been consulted. "About me walking you? About the wedding?" I took the exit and pulled into a gas station rather than continue the conversation at 65 miles an hour. What did Graham say? He said he thought Dad had declined. "Did you tell him Dean hasn't been invited?" "He knows." I watched a man in the next lane wash his windshield with the rough concentration of someone scrubbing a crime scene. "What do you want from Dean?" I asked. "I want him to answer." "That isn't the same as wanting him there." "I don't know what I want." There was the truth, thin and exhausted but present. "I can call him," I said, "if you want." "Yes. If he doesn't answer me, I can't fix that. I know. And if he does answer, you may hear something you don't like. Why do you always give warnings like I'm signing a waiver? Because afterward, people say nobody warned them. I'm asking you to call my father, not launch an operation. Understood?" She exhaled. "I'm sorry." "You don't have to apologize. That's a terrible habit you have." "What is?" "Deciding I don't have to apologize before I've done it properly." I sat back against the headrest. "You're right," I said. She was quiet. "Try again," I added. "I'm sorry I snapped at you when you were agreeing to help me." Accepted. That felt weirdly formal. It was a solid apology. Good structure. She laughed softly. Call me after. I will. Dean answered on the fourth ring. Mara, he said, stretching my name into a question. Everything okay? Dean always assumed my calls signaled a disaster. Since he had never called to prevent one, the assumption was not unreasonable. Natalie is getting married. I heard. From whom? Social media exists in Nevada. Then you know when. I saw fall. I closed my eyes. October 18th. That soon? It's 7 months away. Right. No, sure. Who's the guy? His name is Graham. Good guy? So far. Dean laughed. You still doing that? Doing what? Interviewing everybody like they're up for a clearance. I looked through the windshield at the gas prices and remembered why we had divorced. She sent you a save the date, I said. I got it. She'd like an answer. It wasn't an invitation. That silenced me. Dean had always been better than people expected at locating the exact weakness in an argument. It was what happened after he found it that made him unreliable. She wants to know whether to invite you, does she? She asked me to call. That's not what I asked. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Would you come? Is she asking me to? Dean. I don't want to show up so you can both act like I'm trespassing. No one is asking you to arrive through a window. She needs to know whether you intend to be her father at her wedding. I'm always her father. You've reduced it to a biological fact. He went silent. The man cleaning his windshield drove away. Another car took his place. I deserve that, Dean said finally. Yes, but you enjoy saying it. No, I enjoy that it's accurate. Different sensation. He gave a tired laugh. You walking her down? Yes. In uniform? The question startled me. She told you? I saw something Graham posted. Dress blues, huh? She asked. Well, that should make the photographs interesting. What does that mean? Nothing. I waited. Dean had known me before the Army made up most of my adult history. He had loved the uniform when it gave him stories to tell other people. He had hated it when it came with deployments, fatigue, and a wife who could not always make him the center of the room. Tell her I'll call, he said. You have her number. I know. Then call her. I said I would. He ended the call before I could insist. Natalie phoned me 2 hours later. He's coming, she said. The happiness in her voice was cautious, almost suspicious of itself. He called? Yes. He apologized. For which decade? Mom. Sorry. He said he didn't know if I wanted him there. I told him I didn't know either, but I wanted him to care enough to ask. That was honest. He's not walking me. I didn't ask. I told him you were. I waited for the rest. He said that made sense, she said. That must have hurt. Actually, it was a relief. I did not tell her that some forms of relief could hurt too. Dean's invitation went out the next morning. 3 days later, Celeste sent a revised photograph schedule with bride and father added near the bottom. My name remained in every place Natalie had restored it. For a while, the ground held. Then the caterer withdrew from the wedding. Natalie called me from the restroom at work, speaking so quietly I could hear the ventilation fan above her. They took another event, she said, a corporate retreat. They're returning the deposit, but everyone else Celeste called is booked. Did you call anyone? I'm in meetings all day. What about Graham? He's presenting. And tonight? We have the invitation consult. I looked at the stack of patient education materials I had agreed to review for a veterans clinic. Retirement had not made me idle. It had only convinced everyone that my time was available in larger pieces. What are you asking me to do? She hesitated. Can you fix it? The words settled between us. I thought about the parking garage, about her defending the uniform, about her apology in the car. Then I thought about 140 people arriving at an estate with nothing to eat but expensive mushrooms on toast. I'll make calls, I said. By dinner, I had found 3 available caterers. By morning, I had tasting appointments. By the end of the week, Celeste was introducing me as our operational miracle. Natalie hugged me after the final contract was signed. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she said. At the time, I mistook that for gratitude. It was not until much later that I understood it was also a plan. The catering crisis taught everyone the wrong lesson. It should have taught Natalie and Graham that postponing decisions created emergencies. It should have taught Celeste to ask before volunteering me. Instead, it taught all three of them that if they waited long enough, I would step in. The new caterer was a family-run company based outside Charlottesville. The owner, Lionel, cooked like he expected every meal to settle a personal dispute. At the tasting, he served braised short ribs, so tender Celeste closed her eyes. "This," she said. "This is the wedding." "The wedding is two people getting married," Lionel said. "This is beef." I liked him immediately. Natalie and Graham arrived 40 minutes late because their invitation consultation ran over. By then, Celeste and I had tasted 4 appetizers and eliminated a smoked trout tart that looked like something prescribed for a skin condition. "I'm sorry," Natalie said, kissing my cheek. "Traffic was awful. We drove the same road. You came from the other direction. I came from Richmond." Graham took off his jacket. She means emotional traffic. I do not. She spent 40 minutes deciding whether the letterpress looked sufficiently pressed. The sample was uneven. They're handmade. Then they should make them better, by hand. Lionel appeared with another plate. "I don't do marriage counseling before dessert." Graham laughed and took a seat beside me. He smelled faintly of rain and expensive aftershave. "What did we miss?" he asked. "Trout paste," I said. "You owe me." He leaned closer. "I owe you for more than that." The sincerity caught me off guard. "I know we've put a lot on you," he said. "I appreciate it." Across the table, Natalie was showing Celeste 2 invitation proofs. Neither woman was paying attention to us. "You could take some of it back," I said. "Fair. I wasn't joking." "I know." He rubbed a hand over his mouth. For the first time since I had met him, he looked tired in a way that made him less polished and more human. "My mother gets momentum," he said. "Once she does, stopping her becomes a whole event. That sounds hereditary." He smiled. "Natalie says I avoid conflict. Do you? Only the unnecessary kind." "Who decides which kind is unnecessary?" He looked at me, then laughed once. "You really can't help it." "Help what?" "Turning every conversation into a performance review." That was a question. It was an armed question. He did not sound angry. He sounded amused, but the distinction stayed with me. Lionel set down a dish of roasted chicken with lemon and thyme. Graham changed the subject by asking about the wine pairing. A minute later, he slid the better piece of chicken onto Natalie's plate without interrupting her conversation. That stayed with me, too. People were rarely one thing long enough to make judgment easy. After the tasting, Celeste announced that she and Graham would drive back together. Natalie asked to ride with me. The rain had turned steady. She removed her shoes in the passenger seat and tucked one foot beneath her. "Don't put your feet on the dashboard," I said. "You could try waiting until we leave the parking lot before becoming my mother. I like to establish the chain of command early." She lowered her feet. For 10 miles, she talked about invitations. Then she stopped mid-sentence and looked over. "Does your knee hurt?" "No." "You're rubbing it." I removed my hand from the brace. "It's stiff." "You were limping at the tasting." "I limp. It's one of my signature features." "Have you seen Dr. Levin?" "I have an appointment." "When?" I turned up the wipers. "When, Mom?" I rescheduled it. "Why?" The caterer withdrew. Natalie stared at me. "You canceled a medical appointment to make phone calls?" "It was a routine injection." "That's still medical. There weren't other tasting dates. You should have told me." "So you could leave your meeting?" "Yes. You said you couldn't." "I could if it was for your knee." "But not for your wedding?" She looked out the window. "That isn't fair. No, it isn't." The words came out before I softened them. She folded her arms. "You volunteered to help. I volunteered to make calls. I didn't volunteer to become the event manager. I never asked you to." I glanced at her. She caught it. "Not like that." There is no like that. Either I'm doing the work or I'm not. Then don't. Fine. We drove another mile in the rain. Then Natalie said, I didn't mean that, I know. Don't do the thing where you get quiet and make me beg you to speak. I'm driving. You can drive and talk. You once yelled at 3 people over a radio while putting an IV in somebody. That story has improved considerably in your memory. You told it. Joe told it. Joe adds weather. Natalie almost smiled, but her anger held. I need you, she said. The plainness of it reached me before I could defend myself. I took the next exit and pulled beneath the awning of a closed bank. Rain hammered the roof. Natalie, needing me does not make everything you ask reasonable. I know. And me agreeing does not mean I'm fine. I know. Do you? She looked down at her bare feet. I don't know how to do this, she said. Celeste has an opinion about every fork. Graham says he supports whatever I want, but then he wants me to explain why I want it until I'm too tired to care. If I push back, everybody gets hurt. If you push back, they listen. That's because they're not afraid of losing me. She looked up. There are truths you recognize only after they leave your mouth. I watched rain pour from the awning in silver ropes. Your appointment, she said. When can you get another one? Thursday. I'll take the tasting call Thursday. You have work, so do you. I nodded. She put her shoes back on. And I'll tell Celeste to stop assigning you things. That will go well. Don't make fun of me before I fail. I'm not. You are in your face. My face is off duty. This time she laughed. On Thursday, while Dr. Levin pushed medication into my knee and warned me that limping through a long wedding day would produce consequences he could not inject away, Natalie handled the florist call herself. She sent me a message afterward. Resolved centerpieces. No casualties. I replied, proud of you. She sent back, that sounds sarcastic. I stared at the phone, then typed, it wasn't. 3 dots appeared, vanished, and appeared again. Thank you, she wrote. For several weeks, the balance improved. Natalie attended planning meetings. Graham took responsibility for transportation. Celeste still copied me on every email, but she stopped putting my name beside tasks I had not accepted. I returned to my work at the Veterans Clinic, reviewing patient materials that had been written by people who believed the phrase care pathway sounded comforting. Joe and I had dinner twice without my phone ringing. My knee settled. Then the photographer asked for high-resolution family pictures for the reception display. I sent Natalie 12 options. There was the picnic photograph with my mother, the one Natalie wanted. There was a picture of my parents dancing in their kitchen on their 40th anniversary. A photograph of Ruth and me with Natalie at her college graduation. One of Natalie standing between Joe and me at my retirement ceremony, her face red from crying. Natalie chose 6. Celeste chose 2. The picnic photograph was not among them. It's too candid, Natalie said when I called. You asked for that exact picture. I know, I still love it. But it looks washed out next to the Bell photographs. They were taken 40 years apart. I'm not saying it's fair. What did Celeste pick? The graduation one and your retirement. Of course she had. One framed my family as an achievement. The other put me in uniform where I could be neatly labeled. What about your grandparents dancing? She said the kitchen looks dated. It was dated. It was 1989. Mom, please. I sat at my desk with the 6 files open on my computer. My father's hand rested against my mother's waist. Both of them were laughing at something beyond the frame. What do you want? I asked. I want the picnic picture, then use it. Graham says the display should feel cohesive. Families aren't cohesive. I know you think this is stupid. I think you've made a decision and are asking me to absorb it so you don't have to feel like you made one. Silence. That's a cruel thing to say. It's an accurate thing to say. Those aren't mutually exclusive. She hung up. 2 days later, she sent me the updated display. The picnic picture had been restored. So had the one of my parents dancing. I called her. You didn't have to add both. I wanted both. Did Celeste object? Yes. What did you say? I told her your mother didn't decorate her kitchen in 1989 for Celeste's approval. I laughed so hard my knee hurt. Natalie laughed too, and once again I let a correction convince me the system had changed. The ceremony reading arrived in my inbox in August. Natalie had chosen it months earlier, a short piece about women carrying love through ordinary labor, about endurance not as silence, but as the refusal to let hardship make a person small. Ruth was supposed to read it. She had practiced in my living room, crying at the same sentence every time and blaming seasonal allergies. The new program listed a traditional reading about a wife's patience, gentleness, and duty to preserve peace in her home. I called Natalie. What happened to Ruth's reading? Celeste thinks this one is more appropriate. For whom? It's from the Bell Family Prayer Book. That wasn't my question. I'm at work. So am I. You're retired. I'm still at work. She lowered her voice. Graham's parents used it at their wedding. Thomas and Celeste also served shrimp. Are you serving shrimp? What? I'm trying to determine how far the historical obligation extends. Can you not make this worse? I haven't made it anything. Ruth is expecting to read the piece you chose. She can read this one. Have you told her? No. Why not? Because I knew she'd call you. I leaned back in my chair. There it was again, not asking me to solve a problem, but arranging things so I would be the one standing closest when it went off. What do you want me to tell her? I asked. The truth. Which truth? That Celeste changed it, that Graham approved it, or that you decided it wasn't worth fighting over? Natalie did not answer. Nat, I have fought over everything. Her voice broke on the last word. I closed my eyes. I know, I said. No, you don't. You see, every time I give in, you don't see what happened before. Then tell me. I can't keep defending every choice like it's a border. I recognized the exhaustion. I had heard it in my own voice years earlier, during a marriage where every household conversation became evidence in a case neither of us would admit we were building. Do you want the new reading? I asked. I want to marry Graham. That's not the same question. It feels like the same question. Before I could answer, I heard a knock on her end and someone call her name. I have to go, she whispered. Please tell Ruth. She disconnected. I sat staring at the ceremony program. Beside me was the photograph of my parents dancing in their dated kitchen. My mother had spent 42 years smoothing conflict until nobody remembered she had preferences of her own. Natalie had chosen a reading that understood the difference between endurance and erasure. Then she had handed me the task of explaining why it was gone. I did not tell Ruth. I called her and said, Natalie needs to talk to you about the ceremony. What happened? She needs to tell you. What did Celeste change? I didn't say Celeste changed anything. You use that careful voice when somebody has changed something and you're trying not to choose a side. My careful voice is the only reason this family has holidays. Your careful voice is why half this family thinks you agree with them. She had me there. Call Natalie, I said. No, Ruth. If she changed the reading, she can call me. How did you know it was the reading? I know exactly how much happiness this wedding is allowed to contain before Celeste corrects the tone. I press my fingers against my forehead. Please don't say that to Natalie. I'll decide what I say to Natalie when Natalie calls me. She's overwhelmed. So are you, but nobody removed your phone privileges. Ruth waited 3 days. Then she arrived at my house with the printed ceremony program folded into quarters. She emailed me, she said. At least she told you. She wrote, "We've made a slight adjustment to the reading." That sounds like her. It sounds like a hostage wrote it while the kidnapper watched. I poured coffee into the mug she kept at my house. It said, "World's okayest sister," a gift she had purchased for herself. Are you going to read the new one? I asked. No, it matters to Natalie. If it mattered to Natalie, the old one would still be there. That isn't fair. Ruth dropped the folded program onto my counter. Stop doing that. Doing what? Explaining her to everybody she hurts. She didn't hurt me. Ruth looked around the kitchen. My laptop was open to the transportation schedule. Fabric samples sat beside the toaster. A box of unused escort cards occupied one chair because the calligrapher had misspelled Graham's aunt's surname, and I had offered to return them. "No," she said. "I can see how uninvolved you are." I moved the escort cards to the floor. "The reading is not about me. It is now. It's about every woman who gets handed the bad news because Natalie knows she'll deliver it gently. I didn't." "Good." Ruth picked up her mug and blew across the coffee. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "That I love her and I'll be at the wedding, but I won't stand in front of everybody and read instructions for becoming decorative. It's about patience and harmony. It says a wife's calm spirit makes her home a refuge for her husband. Your home was never a refuge for anybody." "Exactly." "Kenny has survived 28 years with full knowledge of the risks." I laughed before I could stop myself. "Who's reading now?" she asked. "One of Graham's aunts." "Of course." Ruth's anger cooled as quickly as it had arrived. That was one difference between us. I stored anger until it could be used safely. Ruth spent hers while it was fresh. She sat at the table and traced the embossed initials on the program. "Did Natalie tell you Dean is coming?" "He booked a flight." "She tell you he's bringing Marcy?" "No. Dean's third wife and I had met twice. Both times she had apologized for him before he did anything, which suggested experience." "Celeste added them to our table," Ruth said. "What table?" "Family table. Front row at the reception." I opened the seating chart on my laptop. A new version had arrived that morning, but I had not reviewed it. Table 1 held Natalie, Graham, Celeste, Graham's sister and brother-in-law, 2 Bell aunts, Dean, Marcy, Ruth, Kenny, and me. I was seated at the far end. "Maybe they're afraid I'll eat off their plates," I said. Ruth did not smile. "The man who has barely called her in 10 years gets front and center. It's a round table." "You know what I mean." "I do. What are you going to do? Sit at the far end?" She stared at me. "It's a chair, Ruth." "Then why are your shoulders doing that?" I lowered them. The seating chart changed 4 more times before the wedding. I moved closer to Natalie, then farther away, then to a separate table with Joe and several of Natalie's friends. Each revision came from Celeste, with a note about conversational balance. Natalie put me back at the family table every time. Those corrections mattered. I kept counting them as proof that she would correct the larger things, too. Dean called to ask what he should wear. "A suit," I said. "Dark? It's an evening wedding. Marcy says navy photographs better. Then wear navy. Graham said the men in the family are wearing black. You're asking a retired Army medic for fashion advice. We issue the same color to everybody and call it morale." He laughed. "Still in uniform for the ceremony?" "Yes." "Doesn't that make me look a little underdressed walking beside you?" "You're not walking beside me." The silence lasted just long enough. "Right," he said. "Sure. You told Natalie it made sense." "It does. I'm just figuring out the logistics. There are no logistics involving you." "Okay, Mara." That familiar weariness entered his voice, the sound of a man forced to experience the natural result of his own choices. "Dean, she wants you there. Don't make her regret it." "I'm trying. Try directly. She's not a building you approach from the side. You always did think there was one correct way to care about somebody. No, I think showing up is one of the easier ones to verify." He ended the call politely, which meant he was angry. A week later, Graham appeared at my house with coffee and a box of blank place cards. Natalie was working late, and Celeste had decided handwritten cards felt more personal than the printed ones she had ordered. "Please tell me you didn't volunteer for this," I said. "I was voluntold. That condition runs in your family." He loosened his tie and sat at my dining table. His handwriting was better than mine, so he wrote while I checked names against the guest list. For an hour, we worked without conflict. He told me about Thomas teaching him to drive in an empty church parking lot. I told him about Natalie failing her first driver's test because she argued with the examiner over a rolling stop. She said the wheels had achieved functional stillness, I said. That sounds like you. I taught her to drive. Dean taught her to contest language. Graham smiled and wrote another name. I'm glad he's coming, he said. So is she. Celeste thinks it might be awkward. Celeste thinks Linen can be wrong. That doesn't mean she's always wrong. No, it creates a camouflage problem. He set down the pen. You know she admires you. I know she values my usefulness. She talks about your service all the time. To whom? People. What does she say? He shifted in his chair. That you're accomplished, disciplined, that you raised Natalie while serving. All true. She's not trying to erase you. The word was his, not mine. I looked at him. Did somebody say she was? No, I'm just saying the uniform has become a source of tension, and I don't think she means it personally. In what way has it become a source of tension? Graham picked up the pen again. Photographs. The processional. Some guests have strong political feelings. My uniform doesn't state a position on tax policy. You know what I mean? I genuinely don't. He sighed. It draws focus. I'm walking the bride down the aisle. Exactly. The room went very quiet. Graham stared at the blank card in front of him. Bad wording, he said. Was it? I'm not asking you to change anything. Neither is Natalie. Then who is this conversation for? He wrote a name slowly. Forget it. I'll try. We finished the place cards. Before he left, Graham thanked me, hugged me, and carried the empty box to the recycling bin without being asked. Kindness came naturally to him when it cost nothing. The next morning, Natalie called and asked what I had said to Graham. We discussed your father. Then the uniform. You brought it up? He did. He says you interrogated him. I asked who objected. Nobody objects. Then we're in excellent shape. Mom, please don't start. I'm not starting anything. That tone is starting something. I sat at my desk and looked at the wedding schedule I had rebuilt the night before. Every vendor arrival, family photograph, transportation window, dietary restriction, and payment deadline had been assigned a time and a responsible person. My own line ran through the entire day. Venue check, veil pickup, family arrivals, bouquet handoff, escort bride, photographs, reception, welcome. I'm wearing what you asked me to wear, I said. I'm doing what you asked me to do. If there is a problem, I'd like someone to say it plainly. There isn't. Good. The rehearsal dinner was 8 days away. The wedding was 9 days after that. I thought we had reached the stage where even Celeste would understand that changing course would create more trouble than accepting what had already been decided. That afternoon, she sent a group email about final visual cohesion. It included a note asking all family members to avoid strong symbolic accessories or attire that might distract from the couple. The word uniform did not appear. It did not need to. Natalie called within 10 minutes. Ignore that email. Gladly. She sends things without thinking. No, she thinks extensively. I told her it was inappropriate. What did she say? That it wasn't about you. Is anyone else planning to wear strong symbolic attire? Graham's aunt has a political pin. A pin. Terrifying. I handled it, okay? I wanted to believe her. More than that, I wanted to reward her for calling me first. Okay, I said. The next several days passed in final confirmations. The veil came back from Rosa, the stabilized tear visible only if you knew where to look. I placed it in tissue inside a wide white box and set the box on my guest room bed, away from sunlight and anything that could snag it. The uniform hung behind my bedroom door. The operational binder sat on my kitchen table, thick with tabs and handwritten notes. On the Thursday 9 days before the wedding, rain started shortly after noon. Natalie texted at 4. Are you home tonight? I wrote, yes. Want dinner? No. Just need to stop by. She arrived at 6:20 carrying no umbrella. By the time she reached my porch, rain had darkened the shoulders of her coat. I took it from her and hung it beside the door. Coffee? I asked. I can't stay. Her purse remained on her shoulder. I knew before she spoke that the argument had already happened somewhere else, and I had lost. Natalie looked past me toward the black garment bag hanging from the brass hook behind the kitchen door. Mr. Kim's tag rested in the clear pocket, my name and rank facing the room. She swallowed. "No uniform at the wedding," she said. I folded the dish towel in my hands and laid it over the chair. 9 days before the wedding. I know when the wedding is. That makes one of us. I thought maybe there'd been a scheduling change. Mom. All right, that's it? You said no uniform. I heard you. She stared at me, breathing too fast. Then she said, "Graham and I are going to walk in together." The dishwasher gave 3 cheerful beeps. "You're not walking me down the aisle," she said. We decided it made more sense. This time, there was no probably left to protect either of us. I turned off the dishwasher. The beeping had stopped, but I needed something to do with my hands. "Whose decision?" I asked. "Our decision." "That isn't an answer." "Yes, it is. It's a grammatical shelter." "Who brought it up?" Natalie's eyes flashed. Celeste brought up the uniform. Graham and I decided about the aisle. "Why?" "Because we're entering the marriage together. You were already going to leave the ceremony together. That's generally how weddings work. Can you stop trying to make me sound stupid? I'm trying to understand what changed." Everything became about the uniform. I looked at the garment bag. It had not emailed anyone, revised a photograph list, or held a meeting behind my back. How? I asked. The pictures, the processional, the ceremony. People keep asking whether there's going to be some kind of military tribute. Who keeps asking? People. Celeste. Not just Celeste. Name 2. See? This is exactly what I mean. She walked into the kitchen and put both hands on the counter. Her wet coat left dark drops on the floor behind her. "I cannot do one more interrogation," she said. "I can't spend the next 9 days defending every decision to you. You haven't defended this one at all, because you don't listen unless I explain something the way you would explain it. Then explain it badly. I'll take what I can get." She laughed once, without humor. "You want honesty?" "Yes. You have always known how to be a soldier, better than you know how to be my mother." There it was. Not created 9 days before the wedding, stored. I pulled out a chair and sat because my knee had started to ache. Natalie kept going. "When you wore the uniform, everybody knew what to say about you. You were brave. You sacrificed. You were serving. Nobody asked what it was like waiting for you to come home or what you were like when you did. You asked me to wear it. I know. You said you wanted the pictures to show who raised you. I meant it then. What changed between then and now?" She looked at me. "Everybody had time to think about how it would look," she said. The pain was so clean it almost felt like relief. I nodded slowly. "There it is." "What?" "The answer." "That isn't all," I said. "It's the part I needed." She stepped toward me. "I am telling you this is emotional for me. You told me it was visual. It can be both. Yes, you always do that. You get quiet and reasonable, and then anything I say sounds hysterical. I haven't called you hysterical. You don't have to. Would you prefer I yell? I would prefer you act like this matters." I looked at her wet hair, her clenched hands, the small pale indentation around her finger where she had removed her engagement ring for work and put it back on too quickly. "It matters enough that I'm being very careful," I said. Her face changed, but only for a second. "I want you there as my mother," she said. "Not as First Sergeant Vance, not as the woman everybody thanks, just my mother for once. You asked First Sergeant Vance to fix your caterer. That is unfair. You asked her to build your schedule, negotiate transportation, inspect the hotel, manage your vendors, repair the veil, and carry you through every decision you didn't want to make. But now you want just your mother to sit quietly in a gray dress someone else picked. I didn't know Celeste picked it. She sent me the photograph at your fitting." Natalie looked away. "You did know," I said. She was trying to help. So was I. I never said you didn't help. That's all you've let me do. The rain struck harder against the windows. Natalie lowered her voice. If you need a uniform to feel like my mother, then maybe that's the problem. I stood. The movement made her step back. I don't need it, I said. You need me to remove it so everybody else can be comfortable. Those are different things. It's clothing. Then why are you willing to remove me from the aisle over it? She opened her mouth and stopped. I waited. Years of leadership had taught me not to rescue people from silences where truth might appear. When she finally spoke, her anger had thinned into exhaustion. Are you really going to choose a uniform over my wedding? No. Relief moved through her too quickly. I'm choosing not to attend a wedding where I have to prove I'm your mother by pretending part of me never existed. That's the same thing, it isn't. You would miss my wedding over this. You removed me from the wedding, Natalie. You're asking me to sit in the front row and smile so nobody questions what you did. Her eyes filled. You're punishing me. I'm refusing to help you make it look painless. She wiped her face with the heel of her hand. What am I supposed to tell everyone? Tell them what you told me. I can't say my mother skipped my wedding because she couldn't wear her uniform. Then don't say that. What do I say? The truth. She stared at me as if I had handed her something too heavy to carry. I went to the dining table and closed the operational binder. It had grown to nearly 3 inches thick, divided with colored tabs. Everything is current through today, I said. Vendor contacts are in front. Payment confirmations are behind each contract. The transportation schedule changed this morning, so use the version dated Thursday. Her face went blank. What are you doing? Handing over the wedding. You can still help. No. You already agreed to all this. I agreed when I was part of it. You are part of it. You're my mother. For logistics? That's not what I meant, I know. But I'm done deciding which of your words count. I placed the binder in front of her. The veil is in the guest room. Wait here. When I returned with the wide white box, she had not touched the binder. I set the veil beside it. Keep it flat. The tissue is acid-free. Rosa's care instructions are inside. You're actually doing this. Yes, the wedding is in 9 days. I know when the wedding is. That time, she heard the hurt beneath the joke. Her shoulders folded. For one dangerous moment, she looked like she might ask me to hold her. I do not know what I would have done. Instead, she put on her coat. She picked up the veil but left the binder. You'll need that, I said. I can't carry both. Make 2 trips. She looked at me, wounded by the practicality of it. I took the veil back, held it while she carried the binder to her car, then waited on the porch until she returned. Rain blew against my bare feet. When I handed her the box, she said, "If you change your mind, call me." I almost told her the same. Then she walked to her car, placed the veil carefully in the back seat, and drove away. I cleaned the rain from the floor. I washed 2 unused coffee cups. I moved the uniform from the kitchen hook to my bedroom because leaving it there felt like staging evidence. At 9:30, Graham called. "Mara, can we talk?" "We are." He exhaled through his nose. "Natalie's a mess." "So am I. She says you're not coming." "That's correct. Over the uniform, and being removed from the aisle. We changed the processional for several reasons. Name one that existed when she asked me. This isn't a deposition. No, depositions have clearer answers. His voice hardened. You know what? She was terrified to talk to you. She spent days trying to find a way to say this that wouldn't become a battle. She could have started before 9 days out. We were trying to avoid hurting you. That went well. He went quiet, then tried a softer approach. We want you there. In the gray dress? I don't care what dress. Your mother does. This isn't about my mother. Then tell Natalie I may wear the uniform and walk her as planned. Another silence. That would put us back at the beginning, he said. No, it would put us back at your wedding. Why can't you make this one compromise? I sat on the edge of my bed. The garment bag hung inside the open closet, no longer behind the door. Because it isn't one compromise, I said. It is the last one, and it requires me to pretend the others didn't happen. Everyone is compromised. What did you give up? His answer took too long. Good night, Graham. If you don't come, this will follow Natalie for the rest of her life. That sounds like a reason not to put her in this position. You're her mother. Yes. The word cracked slightly. I hated that he heard it. Mara, I ended the call. Celeste emailed before midnight. I am so saddened by this misunderstanding. Please know you are cherished and welcome in whatever attire allows the day to remain centered on Natalie and Graham. I read it twice. Then I replied, received. Ruth called the next morning. I let it ring because I knew Natalie had told her. Joe called next. I answered. What happened? She asked. I'm not going. Where? The wedding. There was no reaction for 3 full seconds. I'm coming over, she said. No. That wasn't a question. I don't need you to come over. Good. I'd hate to arrive with a specific assignment. She was at my door in 20 minutes with coffee and a bag of biscuits. I told her everything at the kitchen table. She listened without interrupting, which frightened me more than if she had sworn. When I finished, she rubbed both hands over her face. Say something, I told her. Do you want the thing that helps or the thing that agrees with you? Both. Unreasonable. I'm having a difficult morning. Joe pushed one coffee toward me. The thing that agrees with you is that this is cruel, she said. The thing that might help is that Natalie probably doesn't understand how cruel yet. She's 30. Adults can be cowards. That isn't better. No, it's just more accurate. I stared at the coffee lid. Should I go? I asked. Joe took her time. Could you sit there in a dress and not hate her? No. Could you wear the uniform and let them resent you? I'm not invited in it. Then no. The answer did not feel victorious. It felt like a door closing somewhere inside my house. Ruth called again. This time I answered. I'm going to kill her, she said. No, you're not. Figuratively. Not that either. She told me you decided not to attend because the ceremony no longer reflected your values. I closed my eyes. That is technically impressive. What do you want me to do? Go to the wedding? What? Go. Be kind. Don't punish her for me. And when people ask where I am, let Natalie answer. Ruth was silent. You're sure? Yes. What should I say? Nothing. That has never been my strength. Practice. After we hung up, I emailed every vendor whose contact had been routed through me. I told them Natalie and Graham would handle all final decisions and copied both of them. I canceled nothing. I changed nothing. I did not mention why. Within an hour, 7 people replied with questions. I forwarded everyone. At noon, Natalie texted, Can you please just answer Lionel about the final count? You already have the dietary list. I looked at the message until the screen dimmed. Then I wrote, It's in the binder, catering tab. First page. Her reply came immediately. I'm at work. I don't have the binder. For 10 months, that sentence would have been enough. I set the phone face down and returned to the clinic materials on my desk. 4 minutes later, it rang. I let my empty place begin to explain itself. The phone stopped after 4 rings. 2 minutes later, Natalie sent another message. Forget it. I found it. I believed her. The binder was large enough to qualify as furniture. The questions continued anyway. The florist wanted confirmation on the ceremony arch. The driver needed the final hotel count. Lionel asked whether Dean's wife was the same person as the gluten-free Marcy listed under family dietary notes. I forwarded each message to Natalie and Graham without comment. Celeste called at 3. Mara, I understand feelings are running high. My feelings are sitting at my desk. You know what I mean. I usually do. That's part of the problem. She sighed softly, granting herself patience. The children are under enormous pressure. They're 30 and 32. They will always be our children. Not when they sign contracts. This isn't about contracts. No, contracts are clearer. She paused. I pictured her in that white kitchen with the green apples, one hand resting on a clean counter. "I hope you won't let pride create a permanent wound," she said. "Is that what you told Natalie before she came here?" "I told Natalie a wedding should center the couple. Did you tell her to remove me from the aisle?" "I supported her decision. Did you suggest it?" "Mara, I refused to participate in an interrogation." The phrase had traveled. "I'm not asking you to participate," I said. "I'm asking because I already know. I suggested that Graham and Natalie enter together. It's modern, symbolic. It had nothing to do with you." "And the uniform?" I felt it introduced an unnecessary element. An element. It would have made a statement. What statement? That is precisely the difficulty. People project. People project onto gray dresses too, usually boredom. Her voice cooled. "You are making light of a painful situation." "No, Celeste, I'm making light inside one." She went silent. Then she said, "Natalie believes you would rather miss her wedding than attend without recognition." I sat back. "Recognition for what?" "Your service." "I'm not asking anyone to recognize it. You plan to display it. I plan to wear the clothing my daughter asked me to wear. I'm sorry you see it that way." There were sentences designed to end conversation without finishing it. Celeste collected them. "Anything else?" I asked. "We would still be delighted to have you. That word is doing difficult work. I mean it sincerely, in the gray dress. In whatever you choose, provided it is appropriate to the occasion. The uniform was appropriate when Natalie chose it. I can see we're not going to agree. We agree on that." She hung up with a gentle goodbye, leaving me more angry than if she had shouted. Joe called that evening and asked if I had eaten. I'm an adult. That wasn't the question. I had a protein bar. That isn't food. That's a building material. She wanted me to come to her house. I refused. She did not push, which made me suspect she was planning something. The rehearsal was held the following Friday. I knew the schedule without opening the binder. Wedding party at the estate by 4, family at 4:30, processional practice at 5, dinner at Celeste's house at 7. At 4:12, Paige called. I watched her name appear on the screen and considered not answering. Paige had never treated me badly. I picked up. "Please don't be mad," she said. "I'll evaluate the request after I hear it. The shuttle driver is at the wrong hotel. Call the transportation company." We did. They're asking for the confirmation number. Binder. Blue tab, 3rd page. Natalie took the binder to Celeste's. "Then call Natalie." "She isn't answering." "Call Graham. He's with the efficient." I looked out my window. A delivery truck was parked across the street, its hazard lights blinking with no visible emergency. "What do you want me to do, Paige?" She exhaled. "I don't know." That was honest enough to soften me. The confirmation also went to Graham's email on September 23rd. "Search the company name." "Okay, and Paige?" "Yeah?" "Do not let them send the shuttle until you verify the hotel address." "Got it." She hesitated. "I'm sorry," she said. "You didn't do anything." "I know. I'm just sorry." After we disconnected, I wrote the confirmation number from memory on a sticky note, then tore it in half. At 5:30, Dean called. "I'm outside your house." I went to the window. A rented Navy sedan sat at the curb. "You could have mentioned that first. I thought you might tell me not to come." "You thought correctly." He appeared on my porch carrying a garment bag and wearing the expression of a man arriving for a dental procedure he had delayed too long. When I opened the door, he looked older than he had on video calls. His hair had gone almost entirely white. His face still held the same relaxed charm, but time had thinned it around the edges. "Hi, Mara." "Dean." "Can I come in? If I say no, will you go to the rehearsal?" "Probably." "That's not reassuring." I stepped aside. He laid his garment bag over the back of a chair, saw my uniform hanging in the open bedroom closet, and looked away. "Natalie told me," he said. "Which version? That you backed out." I waited. She said there was a disagreement about the uniform, and you're not walking her down. She removed me from the aisle. He put his hands in his pockets. She didn't phrase it that way. No. Is there coffee? You're late for rehearsal. They're waiting on the shuttle. Of course they were. I made coffee because some habit survived divorce. Dean sat at the kitchen table while I remained standing. You should come, he said. You should have called her more. That's not the same issue. It is if we're listing things parents should have done. He accepted the hit without flinching. Fair. What exactly did they send you here to say? Nobody sent me. Dean, you once waited 3 days to tell me our washing machine was flooding because you hoped it would stop. It did stop. The ceiling underneath it collapsed. He smiled despite himself. I forgot about that. I didn't. His smile faded. Natalie asked if I thought you'd change your mind, he said. I said I'd talk to you, so she sent you. I offered. 7 months ago, you needed me to establish whether you were invited. Now you're negotiating my attendance. I know how that looks. Do you? He stared into his coffee. I'm not trying to take anything from you, he said. I know you were there when I wasn't. This isn't a credit calculation. I'm saying she needs you. She needed me when she asked me to wear the uniform. She needed me when the caterer quit. She needed me every time a choice became uncomfortable. That's what parents do. No, that's what I do. You don't get to make my worst habit a universal obligation. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. She's ashamed, he said. Of me? Of what she did. The answer struck lower than I expected. Did she say that? Not exactly. Then don't translate. You translate everybody. I'm trying to stop. Dean finished his coffee. At the door, he paused beside the garment bag containing my uniform. For what it's worth, I always thought you looked good in it. That is worth almost nothing. Still not nothing. He smiled sadly and left. The rehearsal managed without me. The shuttle arrived 26 minutes late. They ran the processional twice instead of 4 times. Graham's aunt accepted the new reading and mispronounced the officiant's name. No one died from conversational imbalance at dinner. Ruth reported none of this voluntarily. I extracted it the next morning after she called to check on me. What did Natalie tell people? I asked. That you weren't feeling well. I laughed. What? She's right. I feel terrible. Mara, did you correct her? You told me not to. Good. I hated it. That was the assignment. Ruth went quiet. Your chair is still in the front row, she said. I assumed they'd move it. Natalie wouldn't let them. I did not know what to do with that, so I asked whether Dean's suit fit. It does. Marcy picked it. Then civilization holds. The wedding morning began before sunrise because my body had memorized the schedule. At 5:40, I woke, knowing the hairstylist was due at the estate's bridal suite. At 7, I knew Lionel's trucks were loading. At 9:15, I caught myself calculating whether the florist had allowed enough time for the arch. I put my phone in a desk drawer. At noon, I ate toast. At 1, I tried to review clinic materials. At 2:30, I stood in the guest room staring at the empty place where the veil box had been. The ceremony began at 5. At 4, I showered, pinned my hair, and took the uniform from the closet. I put it on slowly. The altered trouser leg settled over my brace. The jacket closed neatly. I fixed the ribbons, checked the mirror, then adjusted one that was already straight. I was not proving a point. There was no one there to see me. That was why I needed to wear it. At 4:40, Jo knocked once and let herself in, carrying takeout bags. She stopped when she saw me. Say one patriotic thing and I'll throw you out, I said. I was going to ask why you're wearing shoes in your own house. She placed the bags on the table. Fried chicken, biscuits, coleslaw, and a slice of chocolate pie. You bought food for 6. I have emotional depth. It requires sides. We ate at the kitchen table. At 5, the clock in my living room chimed. I set down my fork. Jo said nothing. At 5:12, my phone began vibrating inside the desk drawer. It stopped, started again, then stopped. I left it there until 6. There were 9 messages, 3 vendor updates that no longer involved me, 1 photograph from Ruth showing the estate garden, 1 missed call from an unknown number, 2 messages from Dean. You okay? Then, she keeps looking at your chair. Ruth's second message said, people are asking. She said you were called away unexpectedly. I read it twice. Joe watched my face. What? She told them I was called away. Want to correct it? I thought about sending 1 sentence. I thought about how quickly it would travel through the reception, how easily I could move the shame off my seat and onto hers. No, I said. She gets to explain it. At the estate, my chair remained empty beside the chair Celeste had reserved in Thomas Bell's memory. 1 absence was honored with a white rose and a framed photograph. Mine had no explanation except the one Natalie could live with. I learned later that Aunt Ruth was the first person who did not accept it. Called away where? She asked. Natalie had no answer. By the time the reception began, she had changed the story. My mother chose not to come, she said. And when people asked, why, the empty seat did exactly what I had trusted it to do. It made her finish the sentence. The sentence changed depending on who asked. To one of Graham's cousins, Natalie said I had refused to come after a disagreement. To the photographer, who needed to know whether to keep waiting for a family portrait, she said I had become unavailable. To Ruth, after the second glass of champagne loosened whatever had been holding her together, she said, she chose her uniform over me. Graham heard that version and repeated it. If she cared more about you than what she was wearing, she'd be here. Ruth told me later that Natalie flinched. At home, I did not know any of that yet. Joe and I washed the takeout containers and put the leftovers in my refrigerator. At 8, she caught me checking the clock. They'll be cutting the cake, I said. You don't know that. Yes, I do. The shuttle was late. The reception timeline had a 30-minute cushion. You built a cushion? I built 2. The first one looked obvious. Joe leaned against the refrigerator. You're the reason normal people think the military has secret technology. It's subtraction. I tried to smile. My face did not cooperate. The uniform had become uncomfortable. The jacket pulled across my back, and my knee was swollen beneath the brace. I went to my bedroom to change. The jacket came off easily. The trousers did not. Mr. Kim's alteration had made room for the brace when my knee was its usual size. It was not its usual size anymore. Fabric caught against the upper hinge, and when I tried to work it loose, pain shot up my thigh. Joe. She appeared in the doorway, took in the situation, and did not laugh. Sit, she said. I can manage. Wonderful. Manage while sitting. I lowered myself onto the edge of the bed. Joe knelt and removed my shoe, then loosened the brace 1 strap at a time. Her hands were careful, workmanlike. We had done variations of this for other people in worse rooms, under worse circumstances. That should have made it ordinary. It did not. When the trousers finally slid free, she looked up. I had started crying without noticing. Joe remained crouched in front of me, 1 hand around my ankle. I practiced the aisle, I said. I know. I measured the pace. I know. I didn't even care about the damn uniform at first. She sat beside me on the bed. I had expected the worst part to be missing the ceremony. It was not. The worst part was knowing I had prepared my body to move at my daughter's speed, and she would never know. Joe handed me a tissue from the nightstand. You could tell her, she said. No, not now. Someday. She already thinks everything is a statement. This isn't a statement. What is it? Grief. I pressed the tissue beneath my eyes. That sounds dramatic. You're sitting in half a dress uniform crying over choreography. We passed dramatic 3 exits ago. I laughed, which made the crying worse. Joe stayed until nearly midnight. She put the uniform back on its hanger, zipped the garment bag, and moved it into the closet without asking where it belonged. Before leaving, she pointed at my phone. Do not answer anybody tonight. I'm 53. Then you're old enough to follow a simple instruction. At 12:14, Natalie called. I let it ring. She called again at 12:22. I sat on the edge of my bed in an old t-shirt, my knee packed in ice, watching her name light the room. On the third call, I answered. Neither of us spoke at first. Behind her, voices and music blurred together. "You wore it, didn't you?" she asked. "What?" "The uniform." "I know you did." I looked toward the closet. "How would you know?" "I know you." The answer was so intimate it hurt. "Yes," I said. "I wore it." She made a small sound. "Of course you did. It wasn't for you. That's obvious." "Natalie, everybody asked where you were. I told you they would. You wanted that." "No." "You wanted me to have to explain. I wanted you not to lie. What was I supposed to say at my wedding? That my mother couldn't stand not being the most decorated person in the room? I wasn't going to wear decorations. I was going to wear my uniform. Do you hear yourself?" "Yes, I also hear you." Her breathing shook. "Dad came," she said. "He barely knows Graham. And he came. Marcy came. People I haven't seen in years came. I'm glad." "You don't get to be glad. All right? You ruined it." That landed even though I knew it was not true. "Did you get married?" I asked. "Yes." "Did the ceremony happen?" "Yes." "Then I didn't ruin your wedding. You made it so every good moment had this thing underneath it. The thing was already there. God, you always have an answer." "No, I have pain too, and you keep treating it like an argument." She began crying. I could hear her trying not to. For 1 weak second, every instinct in me turned toward rescue. I wanted to tell her I was sorry, that I would come to the estate, that we could take a photograph, that the day did not have to end this way. Then Graham's voice sounded close to the phone. "You don't need to do this tonight." He was talking to her, but the words were meant for me. Natalie said, "He's right." "I hope you had a beautiful wedding," I said. She disconnected. I did not sleep. The next morning, Ruth arrived with my wrapped wedding favor, a small jar of honey labeled with Natalie and Graham's names. She set it on the counter like an item recovered from a crash. "You look awful," she said. "Family gift." She hugged me. Ruth's hugs were usually aggressive, but this one was careful. We drank coffee at the table. She did not immediately describe the wedding, which was how I knew she had prepared herself. "Was she beautiful?" I asked. "Yes." "Did the veil hold?" "Yes." "Did Dean behave?" "Mostly." "What does mostly mean?" He asked the bartender to make something stronger during the reading. I laughed. "Marcy stopped him," Ruth added. "I like her. I've tried not to. It hasn't worked." Ruth took out her phone and showed me one photograph. Natalie and Graham stood beneath the stone arch, facing each other. Natalie's veil fell cleanly behind her. Graham looked at her with unguarded tenderness. "She looks happy," I said. She was, some of the time. That's normal. Ruth slid the phone back into her bag. "I didn't correct her," she said. "Thank you. I wanted to, I know. She told people you were called away. Then she said you chose not to come. By dinner, she was saying you chose your uniform over her." I traced the rim of my mug. "What did people say?" "Most people became interested in their drinks." "And you?" I asked if that was the whole story. "What did she say?" "That it was the only part that mattered." I nodded. Graham said if you cared more about her than the uniform, you'd have been there. Something in my face made Ruth stop. "Did Natalie agree?" I asked. She didn't answer. That was worse in one way and better in another. Ruth reached across the table. "Dean told him he was simplifying it." "Dean?" Graham asked whether he thought you were being selfish. Dean said, "Mara can be a lot of things, but she doesn't leave without giving you 10 chances to stop her." I stared at Ruth. "That almost sounds like him," I said. "He left out the part where he used 9 of your chances himself. He knows. He should." I put the jar of honey in a cabinet. I would find it months later, crystallized and nearly impossible to pour. Natalie and Graham left for their honeymoon that afternoon. I received no message from her, only an automated link to the shared wedding album when the photographer uploaded preview photographs. I did not open it. Celeste emailed me on Monday. Despite the unfortunate circumstances, the wedding was exquisite. I remain hopeful that time will bring perspective and healing to everyone involved. I replied to nothing. At the clinic, I worked through the patient materials line by line. I replaced care pathway with treatment plan and adverse event with side effect. Clear language mattered most when people were frightened. Joe took me to my knee appointment. Dr. Levin drained fluid from the joint and asked what I had done. Attended a wedding emotionally, I said. He looked at Joe. Don't involve me, she told him. For 2 weeks, nobody from the Bell family contacted me. Dean called once from Nevada. I'm not taking sides, he began. Then this will be a short call. He sighed. She's hurt. So am I. I know. Do you? I watched her look at your chair. I sat down. Was it that bad? Yes. The honesty was merciless. Should I have gone? I asked. Dean took his time. I think if you'd gone, she would have used it as proof that what she did was acceptable. I had not expected that from him. Marcy, say that? Marcy helped. Tell her thank you. She says you're welcome. Of course, Marcy was listening. Dean cleared his throat. For what it's worth, Celeste's memorial chair for Thomas was next to yours. Made the whole thing look strange. One empty chair was intentional. Both were. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry, he said. For which part? All the ones I helped teach her. Then he ended the call before I had to answer. Natalie returned from the honeymoon and asked to meet for coffee. We chose a cafe halfway between our homes, neutral territory with metal chairs and music loud enough to prevent a public scene. She arrived wearing her wedding ring and a tan sweater I had given her the previous Christmas. She looked rested, tanned, and unhappy. We hugged because not hugging would have drawn attention. How was Italy? I asked. Beautiful. Graham? Also beautiful. I smiled. She did not. We ordered coffee. Natalie wrapped both hands around her cup. I brought the binder, she said. It's in my car. Keep it until all the invoices clear. I don't want it, neither do I. That's convenient. What does that mean? You hand me this giant book, disappear, then tell yourself you were responsible because everything I needed was in a tab. I didn't disappear. You knew exactly where I was. You weren't there. No. The cafe door opened, sending cold air across our table. Natalie looked down at her ring. Everyone thinks I'm terrible, she said. Everyone? Aunt Ruth. Paige. Dad, apparently. Did they say that? They don't have to. Then you may be arguing with your own conclusion. Her mouth tightened. You sound like a pamphlet. I've been editing them. Despite herself, she smiled. It vanished quickly. Graham says we should move on, she said. What does moving on look like? You stop punishing me. What have I done since the wedding? Nothing. There it was again. My labor mistaken for love, its absence mistaken for punishment. I will meet you for coffee, I said. I'll have dinner with you. I'll listen if you need to talk. But I will not go back to being the person who fixes every uncomfortable thing before you have to feel it. I never asked for that. You asked so often it became the language we spoke. She stared past me. Are you saying this is my fault? I'm saying I helped build it. That answer surprised her. It surprised me, too. When we left, Natalie kept the binder in her car. She did not hug me goodbye, but she called the following Sunday and asked if I wanted to have lunch. I said yes. I had not closed the door. I had only stopped standing in it so she could walk through me. Lunch became our safest meal. Dinner carried expectations. Breakfast suggested intimacy. Coffee could turn into negotiation before either of us noticed. Lunch had a natural ending and usually came with a check. Natalie and I met every other Sunday at a diner near her apartment. She told me about Italy, the backlog waiting at her office, and the wedding photographs she could not decide whether to frame. I told her about the clinic, Joe's campaign against my gutters, and the squirrel that had learned how to open my bird feeder. We did not discuss the empty chair. The first test of my new boundary arrived disguised as a catering invoice. Lionel added $1,200, Natalie said, sliding the folded bill across the table. I did not touch it. For what? Additional service hours. The shuttle was late, so cocktail hour ran long. Was extended service covered in the contract? I don't know. The contract is in the binder. She pressed her lips together. Can you look? You can. You negotiated it. I found the caterer. You and Graham signed. I'm not asking you to pay it, I know. The waitress refilled my coffee and asked whether we needed anything else. Natalie looked directly at me. Apparently not. I waited until the waitress left. I will sit with you while you read the contract, I said. I won't call Lionel. What's the difference? You learn how to handle it. I handle contracts all day at work. Then you're overqualified. She pushed the bill back into her purse. Never mind. The following Sunday, she told me Lionel had removed half the charge because the delay was caused by a transportation company he had recommended. That sounds reasonable, I said. It took 6 emails. Most adulthood does. She stirred her iced tea. He apologized. Lionel? Yes. Did you? For what? Beginning the conversation by accusing him of padding the bill. Her spoon stopped. How did you know I did that? You're my daughter. She gave me an irritated look, but at the end of lunch she said, I apologized. Good. You don't have to sound pleased. I am pleased. That's worse. Our affection returned in sideways movements. She sent me a photograph of a terrible floral arrangement in a hotel lobby because she knew I would call it a shrub with ambition. I mailed her the earrings she had left at my house before the wedding. She brought me soup after my knee injection and stayed long enough to clean the kitchen, though she put every container in the wrong cabinet. The hurt did not shrink. We simply built roots around it. Graham joined us for lunch once. He kissed my cheek, asked about the clinic, and behaved as if the wedding had been an unpleasant flight we had all survived separately. Halfway through the meal, he said, We should have you over. I know where you live. He laughed. I mean, for dinner. I know what you meant. Natalie watched us with the tense concentration of someone carrying a tray of glasses across an uneven floor. How's married life? I asked. Expensive, Graham said. Apparently, we're still paying for the wedding. Natalie's jaw tightened. He reached for her hand. Joke. Good one. I thought so. He squeezed her fingers. She let him, but she did not squeeze back. When the check arrived, Graham paid before either of us could argue. Outside, he hugged me and said, I'm glad you two are doing better. Natalie looked at the traffic. We're doing differently, I said. He seemed confused, then smiled as though I had agreed. Celeste invited me to Thanksgiving with an email formal enough to require a signature block. It is important to Natalie that all sides of the family feel welcomed as we begin new traditions. I asked Natalie whether she wanted me there. I wouldn't have given Celeste your email if I didn't. She already had my email. I know, it was a joke. Work on your delivery. Please come. So I went. I wore a rust-colored sweater and black trousers. No medals, political pins, or strong symbolic accessories. I brought a bottle of wine, and Ruth, who had not technically been invited, but claimed the phrase, all sides of the family created a binding obligation. Celeste opened the door, saw Ruth, and recovered in less than a second. What a lovely surprise. I'm known for them, Ruth said. The house smelled of rosemary and butter. A garland of dried leaves ran down the dining table. Each place setting had a small card printed with one thing Celeste believed the guests should feel grateful for. Mine said, service. Ruth's said, family. Ruth switched them. Dean and Marcy had remained in Nevada, but Marcy sent flowers. Joe had plans with friends. Most of the table belonged to the Bells. The meal stayed pleasant until dessert. Celeste brought out a set of embroidered Christmas stockings she had ordered for the mantel. Graham's read Graham. Hers read Mom. The new one read Natalie Bell. Natalie picked it up by the cuff. My name isn't Natalie Bell. The room quieted. Celeste smiled. Not professionally, perhaps. Not legally either. Graham studied his pie. I thought you were still deciding, Celeste said. I decided before the wedding. You said you hadn't filed anything. There's nothing to file if I'm keeping my name. Of course. I simply assumed that once the excitement settled, you might feel differently. Ruth ate a forkful of pie with visible interest. Graham finally said, "Mom was trying to do something nice." I didn't say she wasn't. "You could use it here," Celeste offered. "A family tradition doesn't have to be a legal document." Natalie placed the stocking on the sideboard. "Then why put a name on it that isn't mine?" "No one means any disrespect," Graham said. I looked at him. He felt it and looked back. Natalie did too. "Mom?" she said. Every face turned toward me. I folded my napkin. "What are you asking? What do you think? I think you know your name." Celeste gave a soft laugh. "Well, naturally, we all respect Natalie's independence. I was only hoping for a little family unity." "Unity doesn't require matching labels," Ruth said. I kicked her under the table. She kicked back. Natalie waited for more from me. I could see it. She wanted me to dismantle Celeste's logic, force Graham to take a side, and leave her cleanly vindicated. I took another bite of pie. Graham changed the subject to holiday travel. In the car, Ruth said, "You could have helped her." I did. "You said 7 words. They were good words." She looked abandoned. She looked responsible for her own answer. Ruth turned toward the window. "Sometimes your boundaries look a lot like withholding." The observation followed me home. Natalie called the next evening. "Are you mad at me?" she asked. "No. You barely spoke yesterday. I was invited for dinner, not arbitration. You knew what Celeste was doing." "Yes, and you let her. It wasn't mine to stop. You could have backed me up." "I did. I said your name belonged to you. That isn't what I needed. What did you need?" "I needed you to say changing my name doesn't make me more committed to Graham. Do you believe that?" "Yes." "Then tell Graham." "I have." "What did he say?" "He says he doesn't care legally. He just thinks socially it would be easier." "For whom?" She was quiet. "I'm not going to negotiate your marriage for you," I said. "I didn't ask you to. You called me the night after a disagreement with your husband and asked me to make your case. I wanted support. You want reinforcements. Why is every request a flaw now?" "It isn't. It feels like I'm being punished for needing you." I walked to the kitchen window. My reflection hovered over the dark yard. "You can need me," I said. "You cannot hand me a conflict and call that closeness. That sounds like something you practiced. It probably is." She hung up angry. 3 days later, she sent a photograph of the stocking. Celeste had removed the surname. It now said Natalie. Under the picture, she wrote, "Resolved. No casualties." I replied, "Proud of you." This time, she did not call it sarcastic. Christmas required another decision. Natalie and I had spent Christmas Eve with Ruth and Kenny for as long as any of us could remember. Celeste hosted a bell dinner the same night and expected the newlyweds to attend. "Graham says we can split the evening," Natalie told me over lunch. "That's an option. His mother serves at 7. Ruth serves at 6. Your aunt serves whenever the meat stops bleeding. If we go to Ruth's first, Celeste will say we treated them like the second event." "Probably. If we go to Celeste's first, Aunt Ruth will keep dinner warm until midnight out of spite." "Definitely." Natalie waited. I buttered my toast. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Eating." "Which one should we go to?" "The one you want. You're no help." "That's not true. I can give you Ruth's number if you've misplaced it." She dropped her fork. "I want to go to Ruth's." "Then go." "Graham wants to go to his mother's." "Then you have a disagreement." "That's your advice?" "No, it's your situation." She leaned back, furious. "You really like this new version of yourself." "No. She's uncomfortable and underfed. You know, if we choose Celeste, as Ruth will think I'm choosing the Bells over my family. Are you? I'm trying to keep peace." The phrase stayed between us. Natalie heard it too. Her expression changed. "Whose peace?" I asked. She looked down. In the end, she and Graham spent Christmas Eve apart. He went to Celeste's. Natalie came to Ruth's and arrived carrying 2 bottles of wine, a pecan pie, and enough guilt to require its own chair. No one punished her. Ruth complained about Graham's absence once. I redirected her, and Kenny served roast beef 40 minutes late. At 10, Graham arrived. He looked tired, but he had come. Natalie met him in the hallway. They spoke quietly. Then she brought him to the table and reheated his plate herself. He kissed her temple while she stood at the microwave. Again, people were rarely one thing. Their real fight came after New Year's, when Celeste suggested Natalie reduce her hours at the Arts Foundation, where she managed community programs. I heard about it because Natalie called me from her car. She said, "I'm stretched too thin," she said. "Are you?" "That isn't the point." It might be one point. She thinks Graham needs a calmer home. I closed the clinic document I was editing. "What does Graham think?" He says she worded it badly. That isn't an opinion. He thinks I complain about work all the time and maybe I'd be happier somewhere less demanding. Would you? I love my job. Then say that. I did. He said he was only trying to help. The phrase moved through me like an old draft beneath a door. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "I want you to tell me I'm not selfish. You're not selfish for keeping a job you love. Thank you. But you already knew that. Can't you just let the thank you be enough?" "I'm trying." She exhaled. "Sorry. What are you going to do? Go home and talk to him." That evening she did. Graham listened until she said his mother's opinion had been inappropriate. Then he defended Celeste's intentions. Natalie tried to explain that intentions did not erase the pressure. He said no one was pressuring her. She asked why every Bell family preference arrived as the easiest solution. Graham finally lost his patience. "Why does everything have to become a statement with you?" Natalie told me about that sentence several days later. She did not cry. She sat across from me at the diner with both hands flat on the table. "He said it exactly like I said it to you," she whispered. "I could have used the moment. I could have said, 'Now you understand.' Instead, I asked, 'What did you say back?' I didn't say anything. What will you say next time?" She looked at me. Maybe that silence is a statement too. It was the first time I saw her turn toward the truth without asking me to carry it. That night, she finally took the wedding binder out of her car. It had been sliding around in the trunk for 3 months, thudding against the side whenever she turned too sharply. She carried it into the apartment and set it on the dining table. Graham asked why she'd kept it. Natalie said she didn't know. The answer bothered her enough that after he went to bed, she opened it. She told me later that she meant to look only for Lionel's contract. The catering tab was near the front. She found the contract, the invoice schedule, and a copy of every email I had exchanged with him. On the top page, I had written, "Lionel responds better to direct questions than accusations." She sat with that for a while. Then she started turning pages. The transportation tab included hotel addresses, confirmation numbers, alternate routes, and a handwritten warning that the west entrance to the estate became slippery in heavy rain. Under the photography schedule, I had marked which relatives could not stand for long and where chairs should be placed between groupings. The bridal schedule had more notes than anything else. Food before hair appointment, no citrus after noon, migraine trigger, water in dressing room, not just champagne. If she gets quiet, reduce people before asking questions. Near the processional timing, beside the estimated minute and a half we would need to reach the stone arch, I had written, "Slow pace." Let her set it. Don't make her feel pulled. Natalie read that line until the words blurred. A clear pocket in the back of the binder held receipts that did not belong under vendor accounts. Veil stabilization, gas from trips to Charlottesville. The deposit I paid Mr. Kim to alter the uniform, dated the morning after she asked me to wear it. On the receipt, beneath my name, he had written right leg allowance for brace. Natalie called me at 12:47 in the morning. My phone was on the nightstand. I saw her name and answered because boundaries did not require pretending midnight calls were ordinary. What happened? Nothing. Are you hurt? No. Is Graham? No. I sat up. Then why are you calling? She was crying too hard to answer properly. Natalie. I opened the binder. For a moment, I thought there had been another unpaid invoice. All right. I saw what you wrote. What did I write? About the aisle. My hand tightened around the phone. I had forgotten the note. Oh, I said. You practiced. I planned. That's not what I asked. I practiced. She covered the microphone, but I could still hear her trying to steady herself. I didn't know, she said. You weren't meant to. Why not? What would knowing change now? She cried harder. I got out of bed and walked to the kitchen, though there was nothing there I needed. Where is Graham? I asked. Asleep. Do you want me to come over? The question left before I could inspect it. No, she said. I don't know. No. All right. Are you angry that I read it? It was in the binder. I found the receipt. Which one? The uniform deposit. I opened a cabinet, then closed it. You did it the next morning. You asked me to wear it. I know. The words came out broken. I leaned against the counter. Natalie, it is almost 1 a.m. You are tired and upset. Drink some water. Sleep if you can. We can talk tomorrow. You're doing the medic thing. I am asking whether you're safe and hydrated. Those remain useful questions. You always know what to do. No, I don't. You make it look like you do. That is not the same thing. The line went quiet. I'm sorry, she whispered. It was too large a sentence to receive over the phone in the dark. We'll talk tomorrow, I said. You don't believe me. I believe you're sorry right now. That's horrible. It isn't meant to be. Feeling sorry is the beginning of an apology, not the end. She breathed into the phone. What's the end? She asked. Change. I did not sleep much after we hung up. Natalie arrived at my house the next afternoon carrying the binder. She had no purse, no wedding photographs, and no prepared-looking speech. Her hair was pulled into a knot that had partly collapsed. I opened the door. Coffee? I asked. No. Water. No? Good. We've exhausted the hospitality options. She came inside. The brass hook behind the kitchen door was empty. I had moved the uniform into the back of my closet, and the hook had remained empty ever since. Natalie placed the binder on the table. I don't want you to explain it, she said. Explain what? Why you made all those notes. I know why. I pulled out a chair but did not sit. I used you, she said. The directness made me still. I told myself you liked being needed, that you were good at all of it, and you didn't feel things the same way other people did. I feel things. I know. Now. She absorbed that. I asked you to wear the uniform because I was proud of you, she continued. That part was real. Then Celeste kept saying it would dominate the pictures, and Graham said guests might think the wedding was making a political statement. Every time I defended it, they acted like I was choosing conflict. What did you think? I thought if I gave in, you'd forgive me. Why? Because you always did. There it was, stripped of every decoration. She sat at the table. I knew you would be the safest person to hurt, she said. I knew you would still answer the phone when the caterer called. I thought you might be angry, but I never thought you'd leave. I didn't leave. I know. She looked toward the empty hook. I used things from growing up to make what I did sound deeper than it was, she said. I do have pain about the army. I do remember needing you when you weren't there. But that wasn't why I changed the wedding. Why did you? I wanted Celeste to approve of me. I wanted Graham to think I was easy to marry, and I thought you'd survive whatever it cost. I sat across from her. I did survive. That isn't the same as being okay. No. Her eyes filled again, but she did not look away. I'm sorry I asked you to hide the uniform after asking you to wear it. I'm sorry I removed you from the aisle and called it symbolism. I'm sorry I lied about why you weren't there. And I'm sorry I made you practice walking beside me, then acted like the part that mattered was what you had on. The apology was specific. Good structure. I hated that part of me still wanted to grate it. Thank you, I said. She waited. I could see the hope in her face and the fear beneath it. I'm not ready to say it's all right." Her mouth trembled. "I know. No, I need you to hear it. I love you. I am not ending our relationship, but an apology does not take me back to the morning before you came here. I'm not asking it to. You might, without knowing." She nodded. "What do I do?" she asked. "You stopped telling the wrong story. To who? Anyone you told it to." Her gaze dropped to the binder. "I can call Aunt Ruth. Ruth already knows. Not from me." That answer mattered. "And Graham?" I asked. Natalie's face closed slightly. "What about him?" He repeated that I chose the uniform over you. He was defending me. He was defending the version that made both of you comfortable. She rubbed her thumb over the edge of the binder. "We're having problems," she said. "I know." "How?" "You call me from your car." That almost made her smile. "He thinks I'm changing," she said. "Are you?" "Yes." "Then he's right. He says I'm turning everything into a test." "Are you?" "I don't know." I thought of all the times I had converted fear into questions and called it preparation. "Tests aren't always wrong," I said, "but if no one knows they're taking one, the results don't tell you much." What am I supposed to say to him? The truth. You make that sound simple. It is simple. Not easy. No. She stayed another hour. We spoke about nothing that solved us. When she left, she took the binder with her. The corrections began quietly. She called Ruth and admitted she had asked me to wear the uniform, then reversed the decision after pressure from Celeste and Graham. Ruth listened, asked 2 pointed questions, and accepted the apology without promising to forget. Natalie called Dean next. He told her he had already guessed most of it. "Then why didn't you say something?" she asked. "Because your mother told us to let you explain. Dean told me about that conversation afterward. She was mad at you for protecting her," he said. "I didn't protect her. I protected the wedding. You can rename it if you want. I usually do." The harder correction came at dinner with Graham and Celeste. I was not there. Natalie did not stage an audience or invite allies. She waited until Celeste referred to my absence as the unfortunate stand Mara chose to take. Then Natalie put down her fork. "That isn't what happened," she said. Celeste attempted to move past it. Natalie did not let her. She explained the original request, the altered uniform, the removal from the aisle, and the lie at the reception. She said she had made the final decision, but she also said Celeste had applied pressure, and Graham had accepted the result because opposing his mother was inconvenient. Graham asked to discuss it at home. Natalie said they had discussed it at home for months without using the truth. Celeste cried. That nearly ended it. Tears had always functioned as a fire alarm in the Bell family. Everyone evacuated the subject. Natalie stayed seated. "I'm not saying this to punish you," she said. "I'm saying it because Mom's empty chair has been blamed on her long enough. When Natalie told me I did not feel vindicated, I felt tired." "Was Graham angry?" I asked. "Yes." "Were you?" "Yes." "And now?" "I don't know." She had begun saying that more often. It was healthier than certainty. The next few weeks were difficult. Graham became polite in the brittle way people do when anger has been postponed. Celeste stopped calling. Natalie kept her name, her job, and her own conversations. She also kept coming to lunch. One Sunday, she placed her phone face down and said, "Graham and I need to decide whether we know how to be married without someone surrendering. What does he think?" "He thinks we can." "What do you think?" "I think wanting to isn't the same as knowing how." I nodded. "We're going to talk tonight," she said. "Really talk." "Good." She looked at me for a long moment. "Will you walk with me first?" The question entered the space between us carefully, carrying an aisle neither of us could return to. I did not answer quickly. Then I said, "Yes." The estate garden looked smaller without 140 people in it. The flower beds had been cut back for winter. Bare vines clung to the stone arch, and the lawn where white chairs had stood was damp from morning rain. A groundskeeper pushed a wheelbarrow near the terrace, paying no attention to us. Natalie had called the venue coordinator and asked for 30 minutes before an afternoon tour. She'd not told me that part until we arrived. "You arranged access," I said. "I made a phone call. Without a binder? I'm growing." She wore jeans, boots, and a green coat. I wore ordinary black trousers, walking shoes, and the rust-colored sweater from Thanksgiving. Nothing about either of us required explanation. We started along the gravel path. My knee was having a good day. Natalie still shortened her stride to match mine. I noticed, but did not thank her. Gratitude would have made her self-conscious, and then she would have insisted she was walking normally. "Graham is meeting me here," she said. "I thought you were talking tonight." "We are. I wanted to talk to you first. About whether to stay married? About how?" That was a better question. We passed the rose garden. The plants were only thorned branches tied against wooden frames. "Does he know I'm here?" I asked. "Yes." "How does he feel about it?" "He said he understood." That wasn't my question. She gave me a tired look. "He doesn't love it." Fair. I told him I wasn't asking your permission. "Good." "I'm not." I said good. "You also said it like you were grading me." "I'm trying to retire from that. Try faster." There she was. At the end of the path, we reached the lawn. The stone arch stood exactly where it had in every photograph I had refused to open. Without flowers, fabric, or people, it was just stone around empty space. Natalie stopped at the beginning of the aisle. "This is where the chairs were," she said. "I remember. Yours was on the left. I know, next to Thomas's. Dean told me." She put her hands in her coat pockets. "Celeste put a rose on his chair. That seems appropriate. Your chair looked worse." I watched the groundskeeper empty dead leaves into a cart. "Your father said you kept looking at it." "I did. Why?" "I kept thinking you'd come. After the ceremony started, I thought maybe you'd stand in the back." I turned toward her. "Would that have helped?" "No." She answered too quickly for it to be a comforting lie. "It would have let me think I hadn't really done it," she said. A breeze moved through the bare vines. "When Aunt Ruth asked where you were, I said you'd been called away. Then I heard how ridiculous that sounded." "Called away by what?" "You were retired. There was no emergency. There was only the conversation I didn't want to repeat. You repeated it eventually. Every time I did, it sounded worse. I didn't want that for you." She studied me. "Part of you did. I could have denied it. Part of me wanted you to feel the weight of what you asked me to carry," I said. "That's not the same as wanting you humiliated, but it isn't completely noble either. Thank you for admitting that. I'm not noble before lunch. It's almost 3. Then I have no excuse." She smiled briefly. We stepped onto the grass. Our shoes sank slightly into the damp ground. "Can we walk it?" she asked. "The aisle?" "Yes." "Why?" "I don't know." That was becoming one of my favorite answers from her. "All right," I said. She did not take my arm. We walked beside each other slowly along the faint path where hundreds of feet had flattened the grass months earlier. Halfway to the arch, Natalie said, "Was the army easier than me?" The question stopped me. No. Was it easier to love? No. Was it easier to understand? I looked ahead at the stone. Yes. She nodded as if she had expected that. "The army told me what success looked like," I said. "It gave me procedures, ranks, deadlines. If someone was bleeding, I knew what to do first. You could stand in front of me crying, and sometimes I couldn't tell whether you needed advice, permission, food, silence, or for me to admit I had caused it. You usually offered food. Food has reliable outcomes." "I know. I also used competence to hide." She looked over. "If I could solve the problem, I didn't have to ask whether I had helped create it," I said. "That hurt you." "Yes. I'm sorry." She stared at the ground as we walked. "I don't want my apology to erase yours," I added. "Both things can be true." "They are." At the arch, we stopped. Natalie ran her fingers over the cold stone. When I asked you to wear the uniform, I thought I was proving I had made peace with everything, she said. Then people questioned it, and I realized I hadn't. I was angry at myself for still having mixed feelings. It was easier to make the uniform the problem. You could have asked me to wear a dress. I know, I might have. She turned. Really? If you had asked, when you invited me. If you had said the uniform carried things you couldn't hold on your wedding day, I would have listened. Her face tightened. But after the fitting, the tailoring, and 10 months of everyone using my service, whenever it was useful, I continued, it wasn't about clothes anymore. I know that now, and the aisle mattered more than the uniform. I know. I looked through the arch toward the terrace. I had never pictured walking you down one, I said, not until you asked. Then I practiced it enough that my body expected to do it. She covered her mouth. I'm not telling you to hurt you. I know. I'm telling you because you asked me to stop hiding inside competence. Tears ran down her face. This time I did not ask whether she could breathe. She wiped them with her sleeve. Do you forgive me? I took my time. Yes, I said, I forgive you. Her shoulders dropped. But I don't trust the old arrangement between us. I don't want the old arrangement. Good, because I will relapse. She laughed through her tears. I will try to manage things you didn't ask me to manage, I said. You'll let me because it feels like love. Then I'll resent you for accepting what I offered. That is weirdly specific. We have data. What do we do when that happens? You tell me to stand down. You hate that. I'll hate it with discipline. She stepped closer. Can I hug you? You've never asked before. I'm growing. I opened my arms. She held me beneath the bare stone arch where I had not walked her as a bride. There was no music, no photographer, and no audience to tell us what the moment meant. A car door closed near the terrace. Graham stood beside the parking area in a dark coat. He raised one hand but did not approach. That's my difficult conversation, Natalie said. He looks underdressed for battle. Mom, sorry. We walked back across the lawn. This time Natalie took my arm not because she needed escorting, but because the ground was uneven. Graham waited by the gravel path. He looked thinner than he had at Thanksgiving. Marriage had not softened him into a villain or disciplined him into a better man. It had simply removed some of the flattering light. Hi, Mara, he said. Graham. Natalie said you two were walking. We succeeded. He nodded, looking toward the arch. I owe you an apology. Natalie glanced at him. This was not something they had rehearsed. All right, I said. He put his hands in his coat pockets. I told myself I was protecting the wedding from becoming about the uniform. The truth is, I didn't want to argue with my mother. Natalie was already handling it, and when she got tired, I let you pay for that. The wording was less polished than his usual speech, better for it. At the reception, I said, if you cared more about Natalie than the uniform, you would have come, he continued. That was cruel. It was also convenient. If you were selfish, then I didn't have to look at what I had done. No, I said. You didn't. I'm sorry. I believed he was sorry. As I had told Natalie, that was a beginning. Your mother knows how to make her comfort feel like everyone's duty, I said. He looked down. I know. Knowing has not been your problem. No. Natalie is not responsible for keeping peace between the two of you. I know. She is also not responsible for teaching you how to disagree. His jaw shifted. For a second, I saw the response he wanted to give. He let it pass. You're right, he said. Sometimes. It's exhausting. Natalie gave me a warning look. I turned to her. Do you want me to stay? No. It was the right answer. Call me tomorrow, I said. For advice? To tell me you're alive. I can do that. I hugged her once, nodded to Graham, and walked to my car alone. I did not watch them begin. Their marriage did not transform during one conversation in a winter garden. Graham slept in the guest room for 2 weeks. They found a counselor neither family had recommended. Natalie kept her name and her job. Graham learned to answer Celeste without placing Natalie between them, though his early attempts sounded like corporate announcements. Celeste did not apologize to me. She sent a handwritten note saying she regretted that differing expectations had caused pain. I placed it in a drawer and did not reply. A few months later, she called to ask whether I would attend Graham's birthday dinner. "Will there be symbolic clothing restrictions?" I asked. She was silent for a moment. "No," she said. "Then yes." At dinner, she was polite. I was polite. Ruth, who came because Natalie invited her, switched our place cards for tradition. Natalie and I kept meeting for lunch. She began asking, "Do you have 10 minutes to listen?" Then she would add, "I don't want a solution." The first few times I gave her one anyway. She would say, "Stand down." I hated it with discipline. The binder remained at her apartment until every invoice cleared. When she finally returned it, the spine had cracked and several pages carried coffee stains. "Sorry," she said, setting it on my kitchen table. It survived operational use. She had removed one page. I knew which before she told me. "I kept the aisle note," she said. "All right. Is that weird?" "Yes." "Do you want it back?" "No." She nodded and looked toward the brass hook behind the kitchen door. The hook was no longer empty. I had hung my raincoat there. "Graham and I are having people over Sunday," she said. "Nothing formal. Paige, Aunt Ruth, Joe, Dad and Marcy are joining by video. If Dad can work the link, he cannot. Marcy can. What do you need me to bring?" "Yourself. That seems poorly planned. Bring bread if you need an assignment." "I'll bring bread." She smiled. At the door, she slipped her arm through mine. "Walk me to my car? You know where it is." "Mom." I picked up my keys. We went down the porch steps together. She adjusted to my knee without making a performance of it, and I let her. At the car, she hugged me and held on for one extra second. Then she left at her own pace, knowing I no longer had to be pulled behind her or stationed ahead to clear the way.